Hi everyone. Good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
Kate stared at the curves of the ornamentation on the wallpaper. The wall clock was ticking away, beating the beat of the unrestrained rushing forward of life, which did not take into account the opinion of such insignificant grains of sand as some Kate Simons, a 32-year-old housewife. This very life hummed with the flow of rushing cars on the highway, the noise of thick foliage, shouted with the voices of children in the yard, howled with the neighbor's dog, and rattled some dishes in the kitchen of the neighbors from the fourth apartment. And inside Kate was quiet and empty. There were no thoughts, no feelings. It was as if her blood had stopped flowing through her veins. "Mom, are you here?" came the voice of her 11-year-old daughter, Emily. Kate shuddered. "Daughter, are you home yet?" "I didn't hear you come in." "Yeah, I just got in. Have you been to the hospital yet?" Kate nodded. "What's up? What's the news?" The girl was worried. Damien said that there was no point in hoping. The metastases have started to grow. I don't think Dad's going to regain consciousness. If we bring him out from under anesthesia, he may suffer from pain shock. I don't know what to do, my daughter. Damien hinted today that we should consider taking him off life support. You mean there's no chance at all? Emily had tears in her eyes. But it can't be like that, Mom. Today's medicine has advanced. They literally bring people back from the dead. Kate hugged her daughter. The doctors say there's no point in hoping for a miracle. When they take Daddy off the equipment, he'll come to his senses. But I'm so afraid he's going to be in this horrible pain, and no one knows how long he'll be able to take it all. The medications are failing, even the powerful ones. And tell me, the girl asked, why Daddy? He has always been so healthy in sports, not even smoked. It does not happen that cancer so suddenly attacks, and literally in a couple of months wipes a man off the face of the earth. And in general, it is written everywhere that cancer is now successfully treated. Why don't we have it? And they know the good stuff. I never thought I'd have to go through this. When Vince went to the hospital, it didn't look that bad. And the prognosis was very favorable. It's progressed so fast, no one expected it. And the therapies were optimized. It was just one organ failure after another. I can't explain it to you because even the doctors can't explain it. They did everything they could. And my dad was like, it was like someone had cursed us. You can't say that. I don't know what to think anymore. Cursed. Emily was worried. Do you believe that? I don't know what to believe anymore. I even thought about going to a psychic. My grandmother persuades me. She found some man who says he can help me. And I'll tell you a secret. I've already made an appointment with him. Are you serious? Mom, I know you're desperate, but I think this is all a hoax. Baby, I'm jumping at any chance I can. Don't go to him. He's just a money grabber. You're smart. I know how they profit from people's gullibility and grief. I'll just go, my daughter. If he pulls money out of me, I'll just turn around. That's your business, of course. But Grandma's out of her mind. She's fine. She believes in all this. She's forgivable. But you're an engineer, a man with a technical degree. How could you even allow this to happen? There's a lot we don't know about life, Emily. For instance, you're only 11 years old. You talk like an adult. Why is that? Well, you and Dad should be thankful you taught me everything from an early age. And kids today are basically growing up early. It's not mystical, but to get involved with a charlatan, it's stupid and reckless. Better still to look for doctors, suddenly just are such. Emily looked seriously at her mother. Vince is in the best clinic. They're world-class specialists. I don't think there's anyone more competent. That's a good point. I don't know. If you realize all this, how you could have gone to some witch doctor and been persuaded by your grandmother. Okay, let's change the subject. I can't bear to think about it myself. All right, but promise me you won't pay that man. I promise. Her mother smiled weakly. Listen, I haven't cooked anything today. Why don't we order something? Mom, we're really tight on money. Let me cook something myself, Emily smiled. You go get some rest. You're my good girl, Kate hugged her tightly. Don't try too hard. I have no appetite at all. By the way, there were dumplings in the freezer. We can boil them. Dumplings will ruin our stomachs. We just ate them yesterday. Isn't dough and meat healthy enough? That's when you make it yourself, Emily objected. They don't even know what's in the store. No, I'll make something normal. At least fry some potatoes. There's chicken in there too. Okay, sweetie, all right, I'm gonna go to bed. Kate lay down on the couch. It was a shame that her daughter had to do all the work in the kitchen. But at the same time, she was glad that the girl was growing up independent and collected. Since morning, Kate, without saying anything to her daughter, headed to the meeting with the psychic. She warned at work that she would be late. She lied about going to see her husband in the hospital. At work, everyone sincerely sympathized with her because Kate was always a favorite in the team, and coworkers were pained to empathize with her grief. Contrary to expectations, the sorcerer lived not in some abandoned house, but in an ordinary standard apartment in the bedroom district of the city. Kate dialed a number on the intercom panel, and almost immediately a voice invited her in. She took the elevator to the 8th floor. A man of indeterminate age, dressed in a coffee-colored house suit, was waiting for her on the landing. He looked quite handsome and did not fit the usual idea of people dressed in long black coats. Hello, Kate. Nice to meet you, the man smiled. My name is Eden. Let's get acquainted. Please come in. He led Kate inside his apartment. The room was spacious and bright. There were no bundles of herbs hanging anywhere, no chicken feet in jars. Just an ordinary city apartment, quite modern and comfortable. I can see your surprise, Eden smiled. Did you expect to find some medieval alchemists dwelling here? To be honest, yes, Kate smiled embarrassedly. I'm skeptical. I'm a civil engineer. I don't believe in any of this stuff. You don't have to believe in anything. To each his own. I've been blessed by a higher power to see things that most people can't. They gave you the talent to design buildings and structures that I can't. That makes sense, Kate nodded. So you won't look into the crystal ball? God forbid. Only charlatans do that. I work with energy, not sorcery. You believe in energy, don't you? Energy? Kate frowned. Yeah, electromagnetism, kinetic, potential. Of course, the laws of physics have been around since high school. That's right. But modern physics has only explored a fraction of what's in our universe. And energy isn't just limited to the known types. For example, what do you think the soul is? A soul? Kate wondered. Well, they say it's what makes us human. They say that's right. But what do you think? I'm not interested in the religious aspect now. The soul is a kind of driving force that's hidden inside us, Kate began. Oh, I see what you're getting at. So the soul is also energy. How could it not be? We can't see it, but we feel it, just like any other energy. And our thoughts are nothing but energy. Yes, the human body is completely subject to the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. But at the heart of it all is energy. You've heard of the aura, the energy shell of a person? Everyone has one. And there have been enough researches on this subject. There are devices that not only detect the presence of biofield but can also control it. There are people, to whom I belong, who can control it. I have been practicing for over 30 years. Once I was, like you, an ardent skeptic. I didn't believe in anything but physics. I worked, by the way, at a nuclear power plant. And after 40, an event happened that turned my world upside down forever. Pardon my tactlessness, Kate interrupted. How old are you? 75, Eden smiled. No way. The woman gasped. You look about 40 years old. Yes, I know. It just so happens that I was fixed in that shape when it all happened. I was 43 when we had the accident at the reactor. There was almost no chance of fixing anything back then. No one wanted a repeat of the Chernobyl disaster. Especially the memory of it was still fresh. And when the worst was only a couple of seconds away, I suddenly did something that I still can't explain. And even then... What was it? Kate froze. I thought, or rather imagined, the explosion first. What would happen next? The full scale of the disaster. It was just like a movie in front of me, and then I rewound everything in reverse and was able to rewind to the moment when a mistake was made that could have caused all this. We had an inexperienced employee who started working at that time. We were on the night shift with him. He fell asleep and missed the moment when the reactor started to overheat. And it just so happened that I replayed the whole thing back to that moment in time when the kid had just closed his eyes. I don't know how I figured it out, but I realized that this was the moment when the future depended on me. I ran to the operator's room and the kid was just starting to doze off. I looked at the instruments. The indicators were going up, but I pushed him out of the way. We reacted quickly, called the right people, and all this was successfully prevented. So you're saying you traveled back in time? No, I'm afraid no one can do that. That's not what happened. It was like I was in a prolonged déjà vu, as if anticipating all the events that would follow, and it all happened at the moment I went to sleep. It had been a busy day. I violated my job description. I repent. If I had fallen asleep, disaster would have struck. I fell asleep. But it was at that moment that I had a vision that enabled me to save everyone. I realize that sounds implausible, especially since you won't find any information about that incident anywhere. Nothing actually happened. But since then I began to actively study information that could somehow explain my suddenly discovered psychic abilities. After that incident, strange things began to happen. I began to see a lot of things ahead of time and far from being a dream. It was like sudden shifts of consciousness. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do about it. And later I found a man who explained it all to me. I will not burden you with details, and you will not believe me anyway, but since then I decided to devote my life to it. I lived in India for a long time, mastering energy practices. My education as a physicist was a bit of a hindrance. But then I began to connect what I knew with what I had yet to learn. And now I can look into both the future and the past. Don't think of me as a wizard. There are many things I can't and shouldn't influence. But thanks to my gift, I can now help people. The most important thing I realized is that our universe is completely subject to the laws of energy. And if someone manages to tune in to the right frequency, a lot of things open up. I don't think of myself as God or anything like that. As a transmitter, I just catch signals from the information field and broadcast them to those who address me. Let's say I believe that Kate frowned skeptically. It's still beyond me, though. My mom recommended him to me. I'm going through a very difficult situation in my life. I just don't know what to do or what to expect. Tell me, don't be afraid. It's between you and me. If I can do anything to help, I will, Eden said. Only. Kate was embarrassed. Money. Sad, Eden grinned. Yes, it's a sensitive issue, the woman nodded. My daughter let me go to you on the condition that I didn't pay anything. There are a lot of crooks, and they all want to get into your pocket. We're in a very difficult position now, and Keith put his hand on her shoulder, and the woman immediately felt relieved. I don't charge for my services. Any remuneration is entirely your decision. I believe that the gift given to me belongs to everyone. If I took something from my work, I would live now in a luxurious mansion, not in this typical two-bedroom. Yes, perhaps it's unreasonable. But I made my decision at the time, and I'm not going to change it. But then how do you earn money? What do you live on? I write term papers for students. Eden laughed. You wouldn't believe it, but it's a decent income. And I have to justify my education somehow. That's it, Kate said. Well, let's try it. Anyway, 6 months ago, my husband Vincent suddenly felt ill. It was sudden. I was at home at the time. He just blacked out. He was dizzy. Vince is young, always been in excellent health. You can imagine how scared I was. I called an ambulance. My husband didn't regain consciousness, so they took him to the hospital. And then they found out he had cancer, liver cancer. And Vince doesn't drink any of that stuff. And it's almost undetectable in the early stages. Everything was going so well. The doctors got right to work on my husband. The tests were pretty promising. They promised us that there was a cure for it now. For almost 6 months, everything was on the mend. But suddenly Vince started to get worse. He was urgently hospitalized, and after examination it was found that the tumor was progressing and metastasis was actively developing. All nearby organs were already affected. Neither chemotherapy nor radiation therapy helped. Now Vince is barely conscious. He's been heavily sedated with painkillers. He's in an induced coma. He's hooked up to a ventilator and some other devices. I don't understand anything anymore. I can only see my beloved husband fading away. The doctor hints that it's time to stop all this. There's no hope, but I can't. I just can't. We have a daughter, Emily, who loves her father to bits. It's a lot harder on her than it is on me. I just can't imagine what would happen if Vince was gone. So I take it the official medical profession doesn't understand why the disease is progressing so rapidly. Eden frowned. Show me a picture of your husband. Kate opened the photo on her phone and held it out to the psychic. Eden looked at the photo for a long time without hesitation, then closed his eyes and remained silent for several minutes. Kate didn't dare to ask anything. It was obvious that the man had fallen into some sort of trance. Finally, he opened his eyes and exhaled noisily. Only then did Kate realize that he hadn't been breathing all this time. It had been at least 10 minutes. Well? She asked impatiently. I'll tell it like it is. I don't want to get your hopes up. There's no way to save Vincent, but... Kate objected. There's nothing to be done. The fact is, your husband was exposed to an outside influence. That's what caused his illness. When he was on the mend, the influence was repeated and much stronger. And then the disease began to progress rapidly. What do you mean? Kate's eyes widened. What effect? Is it some kind of spell or curse? A lot of people call it that. But I prefer to call it an influence. But who? Who would do something like this? I was on good terms with everyone. He had no enemies. I see that person. Eden nodded. 2 of them, actually. The first is a woman in her 40s. Blonde, rather full and short. Wears long fingernails with a brightly colored manicure. Lots of rings. Always wearing glasses. This woman only thinks about money. Already went through a divorce over it, but she's not settling down. She's in Vincent's inner circle and she was physically abusive. The damage was done through liquids. The second person is a fairly young male. Slim, a bit of a slouch. There's a scar on his face near his lip. The slave is under the influence of this woman, also close to Vincent, practicing some kind of ritual. He's got a powerful energy, but it's completely negative. Simply put, the woman is using him to destroy Vincent. Also, the worst part is that it's probably some relatives. Kate turned pale. Eden, You are now describing Vince's older sister, Darcy, and his half-brother, Eugene. Oh my God, how? How did you see that? Is this really all of them? But why? Why would they torment their own brother? A mercantile interest. What kind of interest? Vince has always helped them out with money, especially after Darcy's divorce. She was left with nothing. Her husband took all the assets. The baby stayed with him. I mean, she's not the nicest woman, but she can't treat him like that. He was basically supporting her. And Eugene, he's always adored Vince. Eugene is under Darcy's influence. It's like she's zombifying him. I can see it's like he's in a kind of a cloud over his mind. I mean, he doesn't even know what he's doing. If you'd come to me sooner, we could have gotten this thing off. But now, maybe we should try it, Kate whispered. Somehow she trusted Eden. I could do a cleanse, but it would only ease Vincent's suffering and give him a few weeks at most. The effects are very strong, and it's already at a stage where you can't get rid of it. It's one thing for the soul to be affected, the energy. It's another for the body to be almost destroyed. I'll do anything. I just want Vince to regain consciousness, to suffer less. I can't let him go without saying goodbye. All right, Eden nodded. I'll do my best, but be prepared for the worst. No matter how hard I look at it, I don't see a favorable outcome. What will be required of me? I need direct contact with your husband. Can that be arranged? Yes, we can go to his hospital today. I'll introduce you as a relative. He's alone in his room, so no one will interfere with the visit. We can go right away. I don't want to waste time. We don't have much time. Yes, of course. Then I'll get changed. Eden left the room, leaving Kate alone with her thoughts. It didn't occur to her that any of this could be true. Why? Why are they doing this? The woman resented it to herself. Vince did everything for them. What good is his death? I've always suspected Darcy was dirty, but not like this. And they're smiling sweetly. And they're not shy about asking for help. What kind of people are they? They're family. My parents and Vince were all over Eugene like crazy. Got him into university. Got him an apartment. Darcy didn't seem to care about his little brothers. Wouldn't even let her see her son. And when things started to fall apart, she came running. I don't know why my mom didn't tell me to go see this man sooner. Who am I kidding? I would have made her laugh. Lord, give me strength. That's it. I'm ready. Eden returned to the room he had changed into a summer suit and looked very presentable. The doctors won't think I'm a sorcerer, will they? Or they'll put us in the hospital together. No, Kate replied. Don't worry. When I come to Vince's room, no one comes in, so we're not disturbed. Great, the psychic nodded. Then let's go. The bright July sun shone through the translucent curtain that covered the hospital room window. Kate shuddered at the sight of her husband entangled in tubes and IVs. She didn't recognize the man she'd lived with for so many years. Instead of a healthy face, she saw something white and gray with huge dark circles under his eyelids. Vincent had lost a lot of weight. His cheekbones were tightly covered with thin, almost transparent skin. Kate took his hand gently. The fingers were dry and cool, as if there was no life left in them at all. Eden stood modestly at the entrance, hesitant to disturb the couple's moment of rendezvous. He was holding a small leather bag in his hands. Eden, come here, Kate called out to him. The man obeyed and sat down in the chair. Vince had been like this for almost a month. May I? The psychic looked at her questioningly. Kate nodded. Eden gently took Vincent's hand. He sat with his eyes closed for a few minutes. Then he stood up abruptly and reached for his bag. He rummaged through it a little and pulled out a small bag of salt and a black candle. Now, I'm going to ask you to step outside, Kate. We can't have anyone present. If anyone tries to enter the room for 15 minutes, distract them, okay? Yeah, I will. What are you going to do? I'm going to take a sample of Vincent's energy with this salt and use the candle to relieve the pressure on him. I'll do the main work at home, but I couldn't do it without personal contact. Understood. The woman nodded and slipped out the door. Kate sat on a small couch in the hallway. None of the staff was in sight. The minutes dragged on unbearably long. Suddenly, a nurse came running out from around the corner, heading toward Vincent's room. Kate was worried. "Oh, you can't go in there," she blurted out, blocking the nurse's path. "Why would you do that?" The woman was stunned, fiddling with her IV. "I need to administer medicine to your husband. It's already time." You see, Kate laughed. Well, his uncle came from Seattle, especially by train. He hadn't seen Vince in 10 years. To be continued. So he came to say goodbye. I even went out and left them alone. I don't want to intrude. My uncle's very upset. They were close before. Just 10 minutes. He'll be out soon. 10 minutes? The nurse looked at her watch. Okay, but don't tell Damien. He'll scold me. We still have a little time to spare. Let your uncle stay with his nephew, but I'll be there in exactly 10 minutes. All right. All right, Kate nodded. When the nurse entered the next room, the woman exhaled. The last thing she needed was for the nursing staff to see her wife's desperation to bring witches into the hospital. Eden looked out of the room. Kate, I'm done. I'll continue at home. Thank you, Kate smiled weakly. At that moment, the nurse reappeared. Well, Uncle, did you have a chat with your relative? She winked. Now let me take care of him. Kate and Eden left the hospital. They said goodbye, and the woman drove to work. The rest of the day passed in gloomy reflections. Things were not going well, and the supervisor delicately escorted Kate home. At 12 noon on Saturday, Kate shuddered at the ringing of the phone. The sound was so intense and disturbing that the woman immediately felt anxious. Hello, she answered excitedly. Kate, good afternoon. The voice belonged to Damien. Can you come over now? Yes, of course. Is something wrong? The anxiety in her chest was growing. Yeah, but don't worry. Vincent's awake. We're shutting down the equipment now. Oh God, yes, of course, I'll be right there. Kate started packing in a hurry. The chances of Vincent waking up on his own were practically nil. The only explanation for what had happened was Eden's purge. Emily. She shouted to her daughter. Hurry up, Daddy's awake. Really? Her daughter froze with her mouth open on the doorstep. Why are you standing there? Come on, hurry up. Yes, Mommy, of course, yes, I'm ready. I won't even change. 25 minutes later, they were both in the hospital lobby. The elevator stubbornly refused to come to the first floor, riding somewhere between the 3rd and 6th. What's the matter? Kate was indignant. One doesn't work. The other is busy. Let's take the stairs. She grabbed Emily's hand and dragged her up the stairs one flight at a time. Damien was waiting for them outside Vincent's room. Hello, ladies, he smiled softly. Okay, now, no panic and no unnecessary emotion. Vincent had regained consciousness, of course, but he was very weak. The nurse injected him with an anesthetic, but surprisingly, he said he didn't feel a thing. Thank you, Damien, Kate cried. Mom, what are you doing? Her daughter stroked her arm. Does that mean everything's okay? Let's not rush things, the doctor interrupted her. We can't explain how it happened, but his condition is still very serious. Kate and Emily entered the room. At first glance, nothing had changed. But then the woman noticed that there were practically no tubes on her husband's face. Vincent was breathing on his own. Hearing the footsteps, the man opened his eyes and, looking closely, smiled weakly. The smile was kind of creepy, but to Kate it was the dearest and warmest. "Vincent." She rushed to him. "Hello," Emily exclaimed. "My girls," Vincent said hoarsely. "I thought I'd never see you again." "Hush, hush, darling," Kate cried. "You'd better not talk yet. Your ligaments are weak. We were as soon as the doctor called." "Oh my God." "Mommy, it's okay. It's okay," Emily said. "Have some water." They tried to talk for a while, but Vincent was weak, and the women were in a semi-hysterical state. Suddenly, Vincent squeezed Kate's hand, looked at his daughter. "I have something important to tell my mom. Give us a few minutes." "Dad, are you serious?" The girl was indignant. "We're a family. We can't have secrets." "Okay, I'm kidding, of course. I understand that you two want to be alone. I'm going to go get a candy bar from the machine." Emily left the room. As soon as the door closed behind her, Vincent squeezed Kate's hands tightly, painfully. "Vince, be careful. You can't strain yourself," the woman tried to loosen her grip. "Kate, listen to me carefully. We don't have much time." His voice was suddenly more confident and firm. Even the wheeze was almost gone. But it was his eyes that frightened Kate the most. They were darker and glittered unnaturally. "Everything would be all right now, wouldn't it?" "No, Kate, you mustn't delude yourself. It will be all right, but at your place. My journey is at an end." "Don't say that," Kate exclaimed. "Kate, don't interrupt me, please. We have very little time. I don't know how much more time I have. I saw something. I don't know how to explain it. I was in total darkness. Then there was a light and some man in a suit, and he was kind of pulling me towards him, talking to me. I can't explain how it all happened. Like a dream. I know I wasn't asleep. And then I saw Darcy. She was binding me for some reason. Eugene was there too. They were taking me apart like a building block. And that man told me later that they made me sick, and I believed it. You don't have to believe it. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that I know, but it doesn't matter. They can hurt you and Emily too." "Vince, why? Why is this happening?" "Because of the apartment." "What, the apartment? What the hell is this?" "Look, I didn't tell you. But you know I got the apartment where we live from my grandfather. Eugene, he's no one Darcy's related to. And he wrote a will leaving everything to me and Darcy. They had a very bad relationship. She couldn't get over the fact that she didn't get anything. And then I did something stupid. You and I hadn't even met yet. I made a will for her." "Why?" Kate was outraged. "It's long and hard to explain. I didn't think I'd have a family and all that. Besides, I love my sister myself. She's a complicated woman, you know. We agreed then with her more in jest so that she just calmed down and not to spoil the relationship. And I wrote that if I died, the apartment would go to her. That was almost 14 years ago. Then she got married, and it was all forgotten. And I didn't even remember, especially since I had you. But then something happened. I don't know what happened to Darcy or how she got the idea that I should be killed. I kind of tried to be as supportive as I could. What else was there to do? I can't believe she'd destroy a loved one over some square footage. I realized that the apartment has gone up in value. Grandfather was not a poor man. He got this apartment from the factory. A boss, after all, and the apartment is corresponding. Now sell it, you can buy a couple of new buildings. There will still be some left. She must have gotten greedy. Someone put her up to it. And Eugene was under her influence too. I mean, he's had a knack for it since he was a kid. Mama even took him to some witches in the middle of nowhere. Neither Dad nor I took it seriously. But Darcy was interested. I once caught them making some kind of dolls. Dad burned it all down, scared and strictly forbade such obscurantism. He was a believer, so it was all forgotten. Darcy suddenly decided it was time to bring Eugene out of the shadows. I don't know what she did to him, how she talked him into it, but they started doing it. There's no other explanation. And I saw it all, how they did it and what they did. He was in some cemetery or something. I don't know what he was doing. And then I saw my sister's face, and she was looking at me like that. And I woke up. I know I don't have much time left, and I have to stop their plan. But that's not all. Now I have a feeling she's going to come after you too, to eliminate all the competition. A notary is on his way. I'll sign over the apartment to you, then the will be annulled. I've got to get there in time. Otherwise she'll just kick you out on the street. We have to keep you safe. That man in my vision, he can help, but I don't know where to find him. I do, Kate said quietly. What? How? How can you know him? Vincent wondered. I'm the one who went to him. I went to him. I know it's crazy, but my mom insisted. I was so desperate, realizing I was losing you. So I contacted this man. His name is Eden. He's a visionary. The funny thing is, he's a physicist. I trusted him. He told me all this stuff about your sister. I don't believe in all that magic and stuff. I'm a pragmatic man, but Eden convinced me somehow. And he's the reason you woke up. He cleaned you, said there wasn't much hope. But yes, my girl, there's no saving me. Right now, you and Emily need to take care of yourselves. Meet with this Eden. He'll tell you what to do. Vincent sighed. I love you so much. I don't want you to leave, Kate cried. Maybe. I'll always be with you. I know now that everything doesn't end with death. There are things we don't know about, but I'll always be with you, even if it's my soul and not my body, but it doesn't matter. Vincent grimaced in pain. Honey, are you sick? Kate was frightened. It's okay. It'll go away. Get the doctor. Kate scurried out of the room in search of the nurses. Damien, seeing her worried face, rushed into the room. Kate sat with Emily on a couch in the hallway. Soon the notary arrived. He stayed in Vincent's room for quite a while. When he came out, Kate was allowed to come in. Her husband lay still. A nurse had just given him an IV. When Vincent saw Kate with Emily, he smiled weakly, but said nothing more. It was a nasty, cold rain. Kate, silently swallowing her tears, watched the clods of damp earth fall onto the lid of the lacquered dark brown coffin with a thud. She herself approached the grave last, holding the pale Emily's hand tightly with half-paralyzed fingers. She scooped up a handful of earth and spread her palm over the grave. Emily did the same. Kate couldn't remember the rest of it, how the grave was closed, how the wreaths were placed, how someone came up to her and offered condolences. The wake, the people. Kate couldn't sit through the rest of the wake. Her mother, an energetic woman named Camellia, had taken it upon herself to make the arrangements and escorted her daughter and granddaughter out, putting them in a cab. Kate was grateful to her. Daughter Camellia said, "Are you leaving?" "I've got the place all to myself, especially since there aren't that many people. I'll come and see you later. It's best if you just go to bed. We've got to get through this. Here's some sedatives. Take a couple pills and go to sleep. And I was going to ask you, it's none of my business, but I didn't see Darcy and Eugene at the funeral. Are they out of town, or did something happen? I mean, what could be wrong with a dead brother?" "I don't know." Kate shuddered. "I tried calling Laurel, but she wouldn't pick up. I even went to her house, but no one would open the door. I couldn't find Eugene either. It was unclear where they'd disappeared to or if they even knew Vincent was dead. I haven't been able to get in touch with them for days. I thought they'd hear from the hospital or someone they knew. I don't know where they are. Fact, they're Vince's closest family. Even his aunt's here, and they haven't seen each other in 5 years, and these guys aren't here. I don't know, Mom, what happened. You can't do that. Anyway, you and I need to talk about Darcy and Eugene later. I have some not-so-pleasant information. I got it from Eden, by the way. Eden. Camelia's eyes lit up immediately. So you went to see him? It wasn't easy. Okay, I'll tell you all about it later. Here comes the cab. All right, daughter, rest up. Don't forget to take your pills. I'll be there tonight. I have the keys. Okay. Mommy Kate hugged her mother tightly. Camelia was fussing in the kitchen when Kate woke up. Lyra managed to calm herself down and the girl fell asleep after taking a couple of sleeping pills. But Kate herself slept restlessly. She dreamt of Vincent, at a funeral, some kind of commotion at the hospital, and for some reason her grandfather, whom Kate had never seen, but knew it was him. Did you get any sleep? Camelia looked at Kate worriedly. You should go away somewhere for a while she's still on vacation. A change of scenery will do her good, and it'll be easier for you to get over your grief. Easier, Kate nodded. You know, we'd taken it all in while Vince was still in a coma. But when he came to, there was some hope. I realize now that those half hours were like a last-ditch effort to talk to us. I'm glad we made it. Otherwise, I'd have spent the rest of my life cursing myself for not saying goodbye to my husband. Come on, girl. He'll always be with you. That's what he said, Camelia said softly. Mom, about Eden. I want to tell you everything that happened. Kate talked at length about how she'd decided to go to the psychic, what he'd told her, how he'd appeared to Vincent and managed to bring him to consciousness. You see? I told you I had to go to him right away. He was recommended to me by people I trust, and they're not going to lie. Eden helped them out a lot back in the day. It's a shame it didn't happen sooner. It would have saved Vince's life. But you can't undo what you've done. His relatives are a nightmare. How could they do something like this? And there's no way to punish them for it. Eden said that karma always catches up with people who do negative things. God will punish them or energy according to the law of balance. How much evil was done will come back, but the law would punish them. What law do you want? Will be laughed at. There's no proof anymore. That's true. You know what I'm afraid of now? I told you Darcy wouldn't stop there and want to hurt Emily and me. I want to talk to Eden about how to keep myself safe. Do you think she'll do it? In Vincent's case, she had a vested interest. The apartment's yours. You said he had it notarized and signed over to you, and that the old will was annulled. She must realize that in case of your death, God forbid, she won't get anything anyway. She's not your relative. She won't inherit anything. And she knows she'll never get anything. I don't think so. I mean, he didn't even get a chance to say all that. Not even about his death. She probably doesn't know. I think she knows everything. Eugene must realize that his rituals worked, though I have no idea how it all works. But still, even if she knows and she's waiting, it's not your fault. Her plan is to kick you out, to nullify you. If I've got it right. I don't know, Kate shrugged. I can't go to her and ask her directly. I'll try to find out through Eden. The next day, Kate invited the psychic to her house. Emily opened the door. Hello, the girl looked at the guest carefully. And I imagined you differently. You look like an ordinary person. Come in, your mom is waiting for you. Hello, Emily. I didn't picture you that way either, to be honest. My idea of an 11-year-old girl is something with bows and dolls. You're out of touch, Emily smiled slightly. And when was that at 11? Already the personality is fully formed. By the way, I'm already writing programs and developing applications. They even want to buy one. Wow, Eden whistled. That's a serious girl. You are certainly far from it. Math isn't magic, but I don't believe in it. Even though you convince Mom. I think it's just a coincidence that Dad came to his senses. You're wrong to think I don't know anything about math, Emily. Mom probably didn't tell you, but I used to be a lead engineer at a nuclear power plant. Physics and math are my cousins, you could say. Come on, the girl was surprised. But then how did it happen that the physicist went into pseudoscience? What is not proven, yet cannot be considered a lie. Moreover, I'm not a wizard or a sorcerer. I'm just getting in touch with our earth field. What's physics to you? And all my predictions are pure mathematical analysis, only transferred to the probabilities of events. There's nothing supernatural about it. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Now, I need to talk to your mom about something. You know, I think I'll accept that you don't have to cheat, especially if you don't ask for money. That's just weird to me. Nowadays, no one will even take a free spit. Money isn't everything, Emily. As cliché as it sounds, my gift was not given to me for profit. That's what I went to college for. And what I was given from above, I have no right to demand compensation for it. Interesting, Emily thought. Well, I won't keep you. Go to your mother. She's in the kitchen. Eden walked in that direction. Kate was setting the table. Hello, Eden. Have you had lunch? Emily and I did a little work. The stove smells really good. I'd like that. Well then, please have a seat at the table. We'll talk afterward. You can start telling me, if you don't mind. I don't like to eat in silence. I don't feel comfortable making small talk, given the circumstances. Yes, of course, Kate smiled. Anyway, here's the situation. Before Vince died, he told me he'd been talking to you in Australia. That's not an island. Don't be confused, Eden corrected her. In your reality, anyway. And there he saw that Darcy was intent on hurting Emily and me in some way. I don't know if you're aware of the will or not, but Vince managed to get me the apartment that Darcy's claiming. That's the apartment, he nodded toward Eden. Yeah, my husband inherited it from his grandfather. He'd foolishly made a will for his sister to make up for her resentment. Now that will has been revoked, and Darcy doesn't know she's out of the woods yet. But I'm still afraid she'll either retaliate or try to kill us all to get her way and end up the sole heiress. Well, that woman is capable of anything. You were right to tell me. I can't neutralize her completely, especially without personal contact, and she's not working on her own. We need to stop Eugene. From what I understand, they're both missing. Didn't even go to the funeral. Yeah, I got a feeling they're up to something. I know I'm just making a fool of myself, but I just can't shake the feeling of danger. Kate, I can put a protection on you and your daughter. It'll work as a shield against their attacks. Technically, it's like a cocoon of dense energy. You won't feel its presence in any way. The only thing is, when I put it on, you have to free your mind completely, so I can get to your energy points and fix it all. You won't be a problem. Emily, on the other hand, is skeptical. It could get in the way. Talk to your daughter. I can't build this protective cocoon without her consent. Yeah, sure, when can we start? Right now. Right now. Then let's get Emily together and explain it to her. I think it'll be easier that way. You see, I haven't told her about Laurel. I don't know how she's going to react. She has a hard time believing things like that. We'll try to convince her, Eden smiled. Emily, Kate shouted, come here. What is it? The girl's worried face appeared in the doorway. Emily, sweetheart, there's something we need to talk about, her mother called affectionately. Emily sat down in the chair with her arms crossed over her chest. Baby, I know what I'm about to tell you is going to make you angry. But as a sign of respect and love for me, and in memory of Daddy, please take what I'm about to say seriously. "Okay, I'll try," wrinkled her nose, replied the girl. "In general, the situation that happened to Dad is the work of your Aunt Camellia. She applied a magical influence on him, which caused the disease. The reason is money, or rather our apartment. Dad made a will for it once, so she decided to take drastic measures. She doesn't know that he signed it over to you and me, but Dad warned her before he died that you and I were in danger. This woman won't stop and she might take revenge." "Really?" The girl was horrified. "I always hated her. A nasty woman. And Daddy was always helping. I knew she was doing something." Emily burst into tears. Kate didn't see that coming. "Mom," the girl exclaimed. "So it's all true? Is Auntie a witch?" "No, dear, Aunt Camellia is not a witch. But your Uncle Eugene has certain powers, and she took advantage of them." "Uncle Eugene, too? But that's impossible. He loved Daddy so much, and he's a good man." Emily Eden intervened. "There are people like that. They're really good, and they don't want to hurt anyone. But they're easily influenced. Your uncle is a master manipulator, using his abilities for evil. He's under hypnosis, so there's no point in blaming him. But I'd be careful of your aunt." "She wants to take us out, too," Emily said, horrified. "It's hard to tell." "I can't judge her intentions," Eden shook his head. "I'm not omnipotent, and I can't see it from a distance. I need to get in touch with her personally to understand her intentions. I don't want her to come here." "She won't," her mother reassured her. "Both Darcy and Eugene have disappeared. You probably noticed they weren't even at the funeral. Maybe they had already punished themselves and crashed their car," Emily suggested. "Don't say that," Kate said sternly. "Whatever kind of people they are, wishing bad things on someone won't fix them. Their fate will catch up with them. But for now, we have to do everything we can to keep them out of harm's way." "Is there anything we can do? Is it serious?" "Emily, look what she and Daddy did." And Auntie smiled so calmly, knowing it was her fault he was dying. "I can protect you," Eden said. "I will put a shield on you and Mama that Darcy cannot penetrate. But you must believe it with all your heart, accept it. Otherwise it won't work." "Emily, you said you're into programming." "Well, what I'm doing with your energy is a kind of programming. I'm recording your basic attitudes. And the defense is like an antivirus. It will catch all of your aunt's attacks, either erase them, quarantine them, or send them back. And then, when it's over, I'll clean it up." "I understand," the girl nodded. "Then I suggest we start now, or we may lose time, which will be to our own detriment. Who knows if Darcy has already started something?" For the next 2 hours, Eden conducted his manipulations. Kate and Emily were only required to sit and sink into a certain state. When everything was completed, the man woke them up. "That's it. My work is done. You may not be afraid now. But as soon as Darcy starts to show himself, let me know." "Thank you," Eden. Kate smiled at him. "I trust you, and I sincerely hope this all helps. Maybe I should pay you after all." "Kate, you've already paid your way." "I haven't had such a good meal in years." Eden smiled and headed out. After he left, mother and daughter talked for a long time, discussing what had happened. A little less than a month had passed since the funeral. Slowly, Kate was getting used to the idea that Vincent was gone. She remembered his words that he would always be there, even though he was gone, and that made it easier. Emily was slowly coming to her senses, too. It was still 2 weeks before the beginning of the school year, and the girl was already preparing for school, wandered with her grandmother to the stores in search of beautiful notebooks. Even had time to meet a few friends who had returned from vacation, communication with whom had been in recent months overshadowed by her father's illness. Emily returned from her grandmother's that afternoon in high spirits. She bragged to her mother about the new tracksuit Camellia had bought her. Trying it on in front of the mirror, the girl fidgeted, trying to examine herself from every angle. Suddenly, she turned dramatically pale. This did not escape her mother's attention. "Emily, what's wrong?" Kate was worried. "I feel dizzy," she said, holding her temples. "It's very stuffy. It's the last of the hot days, and I'm in a suit like this." "Let me pour us some lemonade," the mother suggested. "Take off your beauty and come to the kitchen. We'll sit on the balcony, at least get some fresh air. The weather's really nice." Kate went into the kitchen, took glasses out of the cupboard and a pitcher of lemonade from the refrigerator, which she had been preparing since morning. She threw a couple of ice cubes in each glass, poured the drink, and took it out onto the balcony, setting it on the table. She herself sat down in a chair and relaxed, exposing her face to the warm August sun. This is about to be over soon, she thought. Yes, it's been a hard time. How are we going to be without Vincent? It's easy for prices to rise so fast, and we'll soon be short of money. Although Emily says she'll soon be earning her own money with her apps. I've heard that this field really pays, and even talented teenagers are actively recruited. But still, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a hobby. I have to do something about my job. There's no way I'm selling this apartment. Everything here reminds me of him. How can I honor his memory, even if there's no money at all? Okay, my mom won't let me go to waste, but I have nothing to do in my research institute. Should I talk about a promotion? That's where James is going to retire. How long has he been training me for this job? Can I handle that kind of responsibility? Who knows? You never know until you try. Where's Emily stuck? The lemonade's about to heat up. "Emily," Kate yelled. "Where are you?" The ice had already melted. Her daughter didn't answer. Kate felt a tingle in her chest. She jumped off the balcony, remembering how pale her daughter had turned during the costume fitting. Emily was lying by the mirror, still wearing the suit. Kate rushed to her daughter and jerked her hand away sharply when she touched her. The girl was unconscious and hot as a radiator. "Oh my God, Emily, Emily, wake up!" Kate patted her daughter's cheeks. She only made quiet noises. The mother immediately called an ambulance and ran to the kitchen for a compress. The cold brought the girl to her senses a little. She opened her eyes and mumbled something, but Kate couldn't make out the words. She carried the girl to the bed and pulled off her Olympics. Emily was all red. Sweat was dripping down her back. The team arrived quickly. The doctor gave Emily an antipyretic shot, and she came to within a couple minutes. "Mommy," she mumbled. "It's okay." Honey, Kate stroked her damp hair. "God, I was so scared. You probably just overheated." The doctor frowned. "Let's go to the hospital." "No, please. Not the hospital," Emily pleaded. Kate realized that hospitals were a painful association for her daughter, so she looked at the doctor questioningly. "You can sign a waiver of hospitalization. I'll prescribe medication just in case your fever starts to rise again. But if it gets above 39, call us right away." "Okay. I understand," Kate nodded. The temperature had risen again, but not above the threshold the doctor had indicated. And Kate wasn't in a hurry to call an ambulance just yet. Emily lay in bed, taking the prescribed pills. Her mother changed her compresses every 10 minutes. "It's the air conditioning," she shook her head. "Yesterday we sat under it. My runny nose is getting worse. And look, you're not feeling well at all." "It'll pass. Just get some sleep." "My head hurts so bad," Emily said quietly. "I had the same thing when I had the flu last year, but that was in the winter." "Don't worry. It's not the flu. It's just a cold. That's what's coming out. The medicine will help." The doorbell rang. "Who is it?" This late. Kate looked at her watch, surprised. It was a little after 9 p.m. Maybe it's Grandma? Emily looked questioningly at her mother. She shouldn't. She has her keys. She wouldn't call. Okay, you lie down, rest, I'll go and see who's there. Kate left her daughter's bedroom and headed for the front door. She looked through the peephole and recoiled. On the other side stood Darcy and Eugene. After hesitating briefly, Kate took a deep breath and opened the door. Kate, what are you doing? We thought no one was home, Darcy said with a wave of her hands. Where have you been? Kate snapped at her. Did you know that Vincent was gone? I've been looking for you for a month. No one knows anything at all. The phones have been disconnected. Kate, I can explain. Darcy shoved her shoulder away from her and went inside. She was followed by a silent Eugene. The man looked like her shadow. Kate felt uneasy. She didn't want to let anyone in, but she just couldn't resist this woman's pressure. Darcy walked hostess-like into the living room, sinking noisily onto the couch. Eugene stood beside her, staring down at the floor. I'll be right there, Kate said with a twinkle in her eye. Emily wasn't feeling well. She thought Darcy gave a satisfied hum. When Kate heard that information, she went into her daughter's bedroom and told her not to get out of bed under any circumstances. Vincent's sister and brother are there, she whispered. I'm going to call Eden now. I'm afraid to be alone with them. But I'm even more afraid for you, my girl. I can't let that woman see you in such a vulnerable state, in case she takes advantage of you. Kate typed a message and sent it. She explained that she had unwanted guests over. Eden responded immediately, telling them to stay put for now and promising to come as soon as possible. Kate replied affirmatively and left her daughter's room. Isn't Emily coming out to say hello? We haven't seen her in a while, Darcy said ominously. Emily's not feeling well. Some other time, Kate said sharply. Why don't you tell me what's going on? Where did you disappear to? We didn't disappear, Darcy laughed. We were at home. Weren't we, Eugene? The man nodded silently. Kate was taken aback. What do you mean, home? Then why didn't you answer? Why didn't you come to the funeral? Your own brother was dead, and you were just sitting at home. Darcy, are you out of your mind? I am, the woman said with a predatory smile. Don't you think it's our business whether we attend the funeral or not? It's your business to get your things and leave this apartment with your sick daughter. That's it, Kate thought. God, I can't wait for Eden to get here. I'm scared to be around that woman. Kate pretended to be surprised. Why would I leave my apartment? With this, Darcy held out a thin folder containing some documents. Kate ran her eyes over the papers and calmly placed the folder on the table. First of all, she began coldly, realizing that this was her moment of triumph. As far as I know, will take effect 6 months after death. So your claim cannot be honored for another 5 months. Emily and I are registered here and have the right to live here until you are officially the owner of the apartment. You're reacting strangely, Darcy tensed. So it doesn't surprise you that I brought you a will and that you're basically losing your house. Okay, let's say you're right legally. It's okay, I'll wait. Although, well, if there was a first, there will be a second. Secondly, Kate continued coldly, not reacting to Darcy's words. This piece of paper has been invalid for over a month. Before you come in here and wave it in my face, you might want to find out who is now the official owner of the property. What are you talking about? Darcy jumped up from the couch. Why would the will be invalid? Vincent hasn't regained consciousness in months. I checked back in June. Third, Kate interrupted her rant. Vincent has been conscious. If you'd been more interested in how he was doing in the hospital, you would have known that. And that's when the notary visited him and the will was rewritten. So you have no right to be here now or in 5 months. Kate rose from her chair and pointed her hand toward the door. "Oh yes," forth she grinned. "I know everything. I know that my husband's death was your doing. I can't prove it, but I don't need to. Karma will catch up with you without me. You bastards, taking your own brother to his grave for the sake of some brick walls." Darcy turned pale, red spots appearing on her face. "That's it. You were right, Eugene. That woman suspected something. It's a good thing we had insurance for that." "What are you pale about this time?" Kate asked. "I'll leave my condition right now. We go to the notary and you make a gift deed to me." "Yeah, I'll just tie my shoelaces," Kate grinned. "Well, that's up to you." Darcy rolled her eyes. "Eugene, come on." The man pulled a pouch from his pocket and put his hand into it. Almost immediately, loud noises came from Emily's room. Kate jerked toward the door. "Don't hurry," Darcy grabbed her arm. "Woman, you can't help her anyway. If you resist, Emily will burn from the inside out. You say you know what we're capable of. My favorite niece is in Eugene's hands right now. So come on, get ready. Let's go to the notary now. You can sign a waiver, a power of attorney, whatever. But you'll give me the apartment, understand? Otherwise you'll lose your daughter." "Nobody's going to lose anybody," came Eden's voice. "Who the hell are you?" Darcy looked at him angrily. "He's the one who's going to make you pay for Daddy's death." Emily looked out from behind Eden's back. "What's going on? Eugene, why isn't it working?" Darcy exclaimed. Eugene put his hand back into the bag, and Emily made a long sound. Kate flinched, but immediately heard her daughter laugh. "You'll never make it," Emily shouted. "The aunts have the wrong people. Mom, chase them away. They can't hurt us anymore." But Kate was embarrassed. "Get out of the apartment. I'm going to call the police. You'll have to explain to them how you came to be carrying human remains," Eden said menacingly. "What? What human remains?" Kate looked at him in confusion. "And buried in cemeteries. Keep in mind, you could be looking at an article. So I'm asking you nicely, please go away." "You'll be sorry," Laurel hissed, heading for the exit. Eugene obediently followed. "You won't," Eden laughed in his face. "When will you get your payback? Do you think you can control people's fates with impunity? I've seen how it ends for you. So go, you'll soon find out for yourself." When the uninvited guests left the apartment, and Kate locked the door behind them, she demanded an explanation. "I arrived almost immediately. Don't ask me how I got here so quickly." "You won't believe me," Eden smiled. He ruffled Emily's hair. "I was lucky you didn't lock the door. I walked in and heard part of your conversation. I felt their energy right away and headed toward Emily. Still, the girl didn't believe us completely. They managed to partially penetrate my shield. It's a good thing you called, or it would have been a disaster. But I've taken it down, and they'll never bother you again." "But how can I be sure of that?" Kate asked. Darcy looked very angry, and she would find a way to get her way. "She wouldn't." "Why not?" Kate frowned. "You'll find out for yourself tomorrow," Eden grinned enigmatically. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to sleep. I'm going home. I need to recover from all this hard work. It was a pleasure to meet you, even under these circumstances. Goodbye." Eden nodded and left the apartment.
In the window of a passing train, she saw her husband and daughter. The truth was monstrous. There was a dim light in the old fortune teller's house. It was rumored in the village that the fortune teller had long ago turned 100 years old, but she still did not leave her craft. If the rumors about the centenary were true, The grandmother did not look her age at all. Her eyes were full of life. Her fingers nimbly lit candles and laid out cards. She looked intently at the photograph the night visitor held out to her. It showed a happy family, mom, dad, and daughter. "They're alive." "Alive? Heh heh heh," smiled Grandma after a long silence. "I can see they're alive." "And so are you, granddaughter." "You're wrong," Selena shrieked. "I buried them a year ago. I came here to have you confirmed, yes, dead, drowned, lost, so that I could live again. We'll at least try to try. And you're a charlatan, that's what you are." "Alive is alive," Grandma said with a smile. "It's a terrible sin to bury the living. You'll never be able to wash it off, my dear." Her throat tightened with indignation. Her anger seemed to choke her with its fingers. Her shoulders shook with sobs. For a whole year, she could find neither truth nor peace. At that moment, she even raised her hand so that the woman wanted to hit the old woman. But the fortune teller did not kick out the angry guest, but put her hand on Celine's shoulder. "In this village, they say I'm 100 years old," she whispered. "They lie, of course. All people lie. When Grandma Juliana first came here, decades ago, she was already old. In just a few weeks, she had a nice house made of huge logs, a bathhouse for her body, and a small altar for her soul. And then a string of people came here. Some are looking for relatives, others for missing objects, and others for themselves." "I'm sorry," Celine whispered, removing the old woman's hand. "When they were gone, my whole life turned upside down. I feel like I'm in a bad dream all the time, and I can't open my eyes." "Don't apologize, granddaughter," Julienne replied. "I've seen it all. I've seen war, and pestilence, and famine. I've seen parents bury their children. Do you have a gift? The ability to see?" the guest asked. She wanted so much to hope that the old woman was right, but deep down she doubted the truth of her words. She wanted to know more. "No gift," the witch doctor exhaled. The late-night conversation was beginning to wear her down. "You see bodies, and I see corporeal ones beneath them. They shuttle between us, swarming, not like flies, but like birds, or like clouds. Are they spirits?" "Ghosts?" whispered Celine in horror. "You say spirits?" the grandmother replied. "I say helpers. What makes you think they're alive? They've been searching for them. Not for 3 days, not for a week, but for a month. I looked for them myself, personally. I looked everywhere. I looked at everything, my God, everything. It was so scary. And you just looked at the photo and you saw it. How is that possible?" The grandmother sighed. She was beginning to lose patience, which is rare at her age. "How do you explain to a blind person what the sun looks like? You can describe the shape, color, warmth, but it would still be a pale shadow of what the sun really looks like." As soon as she looked at the photo, she saw the whole picture. Deception, betrayal, and true love. "I'm not 100 years old, granddaughter," yawned the fortune teller. "I'm not 100, no." "Please help me," Selena whispered. "Help me. I'll owe you for the rest of my life." "How would it quite help, eh?" Grandmother Juliana suddenly laughed in a hoarse voice, and her laughter made the guest feel frightened. She was reminded of the old women who used to scare naughty children. They invite you into their house, but there is no way out. Selena jumped up and rushed to the door. The sudden movement extinguished the candles, and the room was plunged into darkness. The guest ran through the old woman's house, fumbled for the entrance to the corridor, and it was a long line. She kept running, fumbling with her hands on the walls in search of a handle. But no, only the endless surface, the relief of the huge timbers of which the walls are made. Suddenly a candle was lit in the distance, like a lone star in the sky. The guest obediently returned to her grandmother, her table, and the maps. "How long are you going to run around?" the fortune teller asked sternly. "You'll scare away all my helpers. Don't think you're the only one who's scared. The helpers can sense things too. And worry. You're scaring them. Granddaughter, scaring them. It's not good. Selena's hands went cold. It seemed to her that she would never get out of this terrible house where she had come of her own free will. She would wander in the dark, looking for a way out, or maybe Juliana's grandmother had other plans for her. The old woman kept smiling, and the sight of it sent chills down her spine. "I'm sorry," the guest whispered. "I apologize for calling you a quack. You're not like that, no. You're the real thing, the real thing." "A witch?" the fortune teller said, and then she moved as sharply as if she'd flown across the table. Selena could have sworn that the old woman's face moved toward her separately from her body. Even so, the guest replied defiantly, "I don't care who I go to anymore. I just want to know the truth, and I don't need anything else." "So I'm telling you the truth," Julianne sighed. "Your husband and your daughter are alive. But the truth, you won't like the truth. The truth will disappoint you, granddaughter." The fog was suddenly gone. Selena looked at her phone, 2 o'clock in the morning. In front of her is a tired grandmother who was old before she even came to this village. And her, Selena, with her eternal skepticism. If she wasn't ready to believe the fortune teller, why did she come? Why had she waited her turn in the gazebo for days? She certainly didn't have an answer to those questions. "You shouldn't have buried them," Julianne said. "I shouldn't have. It's a great sin, granddaughter." "How do you know?" Selena wondered. "I didn't say that. I see that the coffins are standing, and the wreaths and lamps have been lit," the fortune teller explained. "But the coffins are empty, and the earth does not accept them." Selena thought her grandmother had a rare gift indeed. That spring, when she had received the death certificates and organized the funeral for her husband and daughter, the ground was really frozen and couldn't be dug up. The ceremony was strange and long. She had never been to the cemetery since then because she didn't believe in it. "What am I to do?" she pondered, wiping away her tears. "If I leave everything as it is, I'll be tormented. And if I start looking, will I be disappointed?" "Better disappointed than agonized," Julianne smiled, the demonic light glinting in the corners of her eyes again. "Because the truth is very interesting." "Where do I look for them, grandmother?" Selene asked, wiping away her tears. "I'll tell you all about it," nodded the old woman. To the guest's surprise, all the old woman's teeth were in place. "Go to the station." And as Selene listened to the woman, the hairs on her head stood up. Every expensive hotel has its own fragrance, which should evoke the most pleasant associations with the place. A clock that shows the time in different time zones is a must. This way, the value of the place is immediately increased. And also fresh apples or candy at the reception desk to make the guest feel at home. The hotel, where a handsome man and a little girl entered, had all the trappings of hospitality. "Good afternoon," he said with a slight accent. "We booked a room. I'm not sure I filled in all the fields on the website correctly." "Oh, that American language. What's your name?" the girl at the counter asked helpfully. "Nicholas," the man replied with a smile. "Nicholas Crass. I am traveling with my daughter." "Let me see. Yes, Mr. Nicholas, the registration is valid. Welcome to our hotel. Are you Austrian?" the hotel employee asked with interest. "Oh no, not at all." Nicholas waved his hand. "We're ethnic Americans. We live in the Czech Republic now. I have a small business there." "What brings one to the US?" the woman wondered. "Oh, unfinished business," the stranger explained. "You know, life is so interesting you have to keep looking back. It's useful. Only then you realize that time has passed, and if you don't look back, it will have been wasted." The woman stood with her mouth open. The guest literally charmed her. Such a caring and intelligent man, traveling all alone with a little girl. She looked to be about 6 years old at most. She wanted so much to talk to the stranger some more, to have a cup of coffee or better, a glass of wine. It was as if he read her thoughts, moved as close as the counter allowed, and said confidentially, Maria usually falls asleep around 10 o'clock at night. Knock on my door twice. I'll come out and we'll take a walk. Maybe show me your hotel or your soul. You have such deep eyes. I can tell you're a wonderful person." The hotel employee blushed. It seemed she had never been complimented in her life, especially such nice men. Such, but ethnically American, with his own little business. Maybe there would be a job for her, too. On the one hand, she adored New York, her hometown. On the other hand, she wanted to see the world, or at least Europe. "You know," the girl whispered, "my name is Barbara. Just Barbara to my friends." He only smiled in response. It seemed that the guest was doing it out of politeness, but it turned out to be very warmly European. But his eyes, they had the same dark color as the winter forest that came up close to the hotel on one side, and just as cold. As if he had nothing to do with her warm laughter. She felt like she should say something, but she couldn't find the words. "Here's the card," Barbara said. "Your room, with a crib. Just as you ordered. You're on the 3rd floor, Mr. Nicholas." "Thank you very much," he replied in a deep, clear voice. "It's so nice to be back in the motherland. I adore the United States. Nowhere else in the world are there such charming women and such hard workers." In the commotion, she had completely forgotten to ask Nicholas for his passport. The rules were strict now. The data a guest gave during electronic registration had to be checked and immediately forwarded to the police. But for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to call the man. She'd better go to him at 9 o'clock at night and remind him about the documents. Nicholas was already walking away, holding the hand of his little daughter. They had only one small suitcase on wheels. Barbara almost decided to call the man under some plausible pretext. But then several guests came to the counter, a whole group of travelers. They were back in their hometown. He ordered dinner directly to the room and didn't want to go outside. As the girl fell asleep, there was a knock at the door. He was not mistaken. The porter with the beautiful name of Barbara could not resist his charms. "I've been waiting for you," he said in a voice that made her want to throw herself into his arms. "All my life?" Barbara asked hopefully. "Yes," Nicholas whispered and kissed her gently on the cheek. "The best acquaintances are always casual. You won't have a problem spending some time with me, will you?" "No," the girl smiled. "I've already changed. I can do whatever I want." "I'm glad I met you too, Nicholas." "Please, Barbara," asked the American Setch. "Let's use the first name. I feel like I've known you all my life." Had she known how this encounter would end, she wouldn't have hesitated to rush back behind the counter. "This is crazy. Real crazy," Selena thought as she stood on the platform. Along with the pre-dawn mist, the magic had dissolved, and the inconsolable widow suddenly realized what foolishness she had wasted a whole week of her life on, along with the crumbs of her last money. First, she had taken a bus to Washington, and then spent 24 hours on a train. Then she hitchhiked to the village where Grandma Juliana lived, the legendary Grandma Juliana. After 2 days of waiting, the old woman finally deigned to receive her deep into the night. By this time, Celine's back ached, because for 2 days in a row, she had to sleep in the gazebo on some ridiculous tourist mat. There was not just a line for Julian, but a pilgrimage. "You're lucky," the young man who had set up a tent on the property told her. "I've been waiting for 2 weeks, and I may have to spend another month here." "What are you waiting for?" asked Celine. "I want to learn," the boy replied. "I have a gift. Do you want me to tell you about you? Your name is Selena, you're from New York." "Well, let's just say I told you that yesterday." "Good," nodded the pilgrim. "You came here to find the killer, but we both know that the real killer is you." The strange guide who discovered the gift of clairvoyance stayed in the tent, and the inconsolable widow had the strangest night of her life. These events now seemed like a dream. Could something like this really happen? Deep down, Selena knew she had to get her head on straight, that since she had suffered such grief, she had to move on. There were still no options. I must live, the woman said, to live for myself and for the memory of them. But is that possible now? The most surprising thing is that Selena, who has been interested in magic and esotericism all her life, had never even heard of Grandma Juliana. But she clung to her as her last hope to make sense of the misfortune that had befallen her family. During the reception, it had indeed seemed to her that the old woman possessed fantastic powers. But now, in the selenium of the day, everything that had happened was doubtful. At the psychic's behest, she must go to the place where the whole story had spun from, to her hometown, where Selena had met the love of her life, experienced the joy of motherhood, and then the grief of loss. Although it had been over a year since she lost Maria and Michael, the wounds in her soul were taking their time to heal. Who knew that an ordinary vacation trip to Chicago would turn into such a terrible tragedy? It was all Michael's fault. He couldn't sit still in one place. He was in some kind of permanent movement, always ready to go somewhere, to do something and create. Why didn't I go with them? The woman questioned. Why didn't I go missing too? Selena couldn't make sense of her feelings and couldn't figure out whether she missed her husband or her daughter more. Probably both. In the days of her misfortune, she dropped everything and flew to Chicago. She traveled to every hospital, cemetery and morgue, visited dozens of offices. It seems that for the month that she spent by the sea, not even once did not even sleep a wink. All in vain. Michael and Maria had vanished into thin air. Why should she go back to New York? Only recently Selena had fled from this city on the Neva in shame and despair. In her heart she realized Michael was gone and so was Maria. Along with them, her quiet life and sleep and rest flew away. The search required a lot of money. She had to mortgage the apartment. This sum was spent on private detectives, lawyers, clairvoyants, all in vain. She couldn't show herself to her parents either. Her mother still blamed her for letting her granddaughter go on vacation alone with her father. Who knew you could disappear without a trace in Chicago? But there was one thing that did give her hope. After all, neither husband nor daughter's bodies were ever found, which means they might have survived, so there's still a chance. The car Michael had rented before he died had its front windows open. He must have fought to the last man, Selene thought. What a man! If they had left the car, they might have survived. After the incident, she was horrified to learn that such stories of cars being swept out to sea were not uncommon. She just never thought something like this could happen to her family. Until the last moment, she believed in the best. At the provincial train station, she saw the same guy who had spent so many days in a tent waiting for an audience. Selena turned away, but he had already spotted her and started waving. He ran up, despite his weighty backpack. "Hello," he said. "What, are you coming back?" "Yes," Selena nodded. "I'd like to be alone." "Can you imagine what my grandmother said?" The boy continued, ignoring her words. "She says I don't have any powers." "You quack. Probably just afraid of competition." "What did she tell you?" "It's nothing," Selene replied and waved her hand. She still hoped that Michael had simply lost his memory and that Maria was too young to tell her anything about herself, and that they would meet again. Her mind told her to just accept the loss and move on with her life. She was still young. She could still have a new family, children. But the pain of loss seemed unbearable. Almost all the way to DC, she was entertained by this strange guy, talking about how he'd felt different since he was a kid, that people didn't understand him and were afraid of him, that he could read minds and see the future through his hands and eyes. Selena even agreed to let him read her fortune for that he had to sit on the side, and a few stations before Washington. A vision, he said suddenly, and the guy's eyes really did turn glassy. Seeing your world changing, how what you think is true becomes a dream. An officer with gold epaulets comes out of a glass door and takes you prisoner. Selena laughed, so amused by this performance. Her grandmother had been right. The traveling companion had no powers. What's his name, by the way? Waking up, the boy pretended to be very confused. He gathered his things, threw a huge backpack on his shoulders, and jumped out of the train. Selena smiled even wider. It wasn't until she got off at the train station in Washington, D.C., that she suddenly realized why this young psychic had decided to run away. And the realization of the truth made her want to cry. For the fourth day in a row, Barbara flew with happiness. She'd never left the walls of her home hotel. Why should she go home when she had a family of her own, almost her own? After all, in her 30s, she was not even married. Even a serious relationship seemed fantastic to her. Maybe it had something to do with her temperament. Barbara did not know how to demand or even ask, but could only hint. Maybe her loneliness was due to her work. 12-hour shifts completely deprived her of strength. And of course, one could always meet an interesting man for a one-night stand in a hotel. At first, she thought it was something shameful, but then she accepted it. After all, a fleeting relationship is better than no relationship at all. Still, her soul was still dreaming, if not of a prince, then at least of an interesting man who would take her away. It's impossible to have a relationship in this city, Barbara complained to her friends. Everyone is married, a drug addict, a gambler, or a cheapskate. I don't know which is worse. They just shrugged their shoulders. Everyone she had studied with years ago at the hospitality college had husbands and children. And some even had second-circle families. And only Barbara had had no luck on the love front, with only setbacks and defeats. Now that was about to change. Nicholas turned out to be a terrific man, intelligent, caring, well-read. It's as if he came from another reality. His daughter was incredibly well-mannered and polite. She dressed herself, washed her own clothes, and generally behaved much older than her 6 years. On the second day, Barbara replaced her new family's room, taking advantage of her opportunities. Nicholas was now living in an apartment with 2 rooms for the same money, and in one of them, they could spend the night together without the risk of embarrassing the girl. Barbara had to leave the room at 6 in the morning so that no one would notice them together. The hotel used to have its own security service, but the coronavirus and the tourism crisis that followed had forced the management to cut costs. Barbara knew the cameras on the floor were just for show, so she wasn't afraid of being exposed. Harry, a hotel owner in historic New York City, upon learning of the affair, would describe her behavior this way. This is inconsistent with the high standards of our institution. It is unacceptable to engage with customers. On the other hand, if the guest made the first move, you should have politely declined or quit the hotel. Barbara could hear her boss's voice in her head. Luckily, Harry was visiting his brainchild less and less often and was busy with other projects. The other employees, if they noticed various unusual activity, didn't pay much attention. And who would judge her? Sophia, her replacement, who, because of the frenzied pace of work, also had a troubled personal life. Or the cooks and bartenders, who were changing at an unbelievable rate. The main question on Barbara's mind was how long this fairy tale would last. Would Nicholas take her with him to the Czech Republic? Or would he buy an apartment here, move in, and the 3 of them would live together like a real family? When she had a day off, she decided to give Nicholas and his daughter a tour of New York. She took them through the streets of the city. They saw the Statue of Liberty. "Here, it's the Statue of Liberty," she said. Then she showed them her favorite places, not the parade routes that tourists often take. Her favorite canteen, where she could taste wonderful food without paying a lot of money. I wanted to show him the room I rented with my girlfriend, but I was afraid. What if he liked it better? Nicholas was gorgeous, and she fell in love like she'd never fallen in love before. But his eyes, there was a sadness in them, a tragedy, and every day Barbara was closer to finding it. The girl sometimes withdrew into herself, and when she called to her, there were tears in the children's eyes. Nicholas, when Barbara had once casually said something about Mary's mother, had gotten all tense and asked to change the subject. It was obvious that the charming Setch didn't have a wife. At least not now. Of course, Barbara would have liked to know the truth, but curiosity wasn't that strong. If it's a family secret, if it's not customary to talk about it, let it be. Someday they'll tell it themselves. The young woman was more interested in another matter. Sooner or later Nicholas would finish his business in the United States, and then what? It was necessary to hint that she might be useful in Europe. She was learning German and French. She could take care of the girl while he was at work. But having this conversation and getting over herself seemed unrealistic. How could she get over herself? How to transcend this natural modesty that almost broke her life? In the evening, when Nicholas had put the girl to bed, he went outside to see her. The two of them walked to the coffee shop next door and got themselves drinks. How long had it been since Barbara had been home? Or was her home now not where she thought it was at all? The conversation, the sweet compliments, and little caresses went on for a very long time. I think Maria has already fully accepted me, stretched out Barbara, blushing. Where to? Wondered Nicholas. To the family. To your family? The girl whispered and closed her eyes in embarrassment. Oh, you're so good, the man said, hugged her tightly and kissed her. Of course she did. She's had such a hard time dealing with the loss. Please never, ever remind her about her mother. It's a sore subject with us. Forbidden. During the next walk, he bought her a beautiful and expensive scarf. She had never worn anything like it, of course, but she put it on immediately to please the man. Nicholas gave her a charming smile. Barbara, he said, I have a proposition for you. It may sound strange, but listen to the end of it. The young woman brightened. She knew that Europeans were quick to make decisions, but was she really that quick? No, she would not take his last name. She would keep her own, but their future children. I'm all ears, whispered the young woman. Barbara, just listen to the end, okay? Nicholas continued. Maria and I are in trouble, and we're going to do something that's going to get us out of this cycle of bad luck. You have to, As the man recounted his plan, his new poster felt more and more like the heroine of a spy movie, a real thriller. The request for help caused Barbara some apprehension, and she even thought of refusing at first. However, if he would really take her with him to Europe, it could be a risk. An interrogator sounds proud, much better than a district inspector or an internal duty officer. Despite the proud title, Alston hated his current job. All day long, he spent his days circling New York City, conducting pointless interviews with people, and making equally useless rulings. He was in his 30s, captain stars falling on his shoulders, but there was no promotion. It was his own fault. He himself had chosen the dusty job of interrogation, which was dominated by meaningless and useless labor. A man died in the street. His heart stopped. He had to check if a crime had been committed. Even if he was already 90 years old, even if he was a regular at the cardiologist, a man chokes at home in front of witnesses, and the expert confirms it. Do me a favor, interview everyone involved, including neighbors. Even if the medical examiner swears there are 2 cases a week in his neighborhood. A woman with a broken nose went to the hospital, quickly run to her home, question her about whether she suffers from domestic violence. Checks, rulings, orders, and it would be fine if the duties of the inquirer would end there. But no. At least once a week, he had to be on duty at some event or concert, to keep order while the rest of us rested. He wistfully remembered the coronavirus when there was no crime or public events. At least once a week, stand in convoy in court. An interrogator had no life, just a job. The only thing that could cheer Alston up at all was an interesting case. He'd had a few of those in his career, but not very often. Usually he felt that some trivial assignment was in danger of turning into something worthwhile. But even then, alas, there were limits. As soon as you come up with an interesting crime, the material will be immediately taken away from you, either by the investigation or by the prosecutor's office. They need it more. Austin, the boss, walked into the office without knocking. Drop everything, there's an urgent errand to run. Austin adjusted his glasses, a gesture he used deliberately to keep from saying too much. If he did, his bonus would be forfeited, and his meager salary would become a pittance. There was no work in the inquest except urgent work. The ruling he was typing now should have been issued 3 days ago. And the answer still had to be coordinated with the head of the line department. That's right, Austin replied. I'll just print out the ruling, or the prosecutor's office will send us another happy letter. What have you got there? The supervisor asked, peering unceremoniously into the monitor. Oh yes, the accident. Your accident can wait, Austin. Look where the assignment came from. Right there. The colonel proudly pointed to the envelope and the document, the 3-letter abbreviation, which the police preferred not to say aloud, inspired respect. But if this assignment was sent down to their level, it means that there can't be anything alive there. It was just another response and a useless check. All right, Austin nodded. I'll send the resolution later. But, Comrade Colonel, if anything happens, I'll blame you. If there are any problems with the ruling, no more bickering, said the chief. You see what kind of cases I'm assigning you. Not just anything, but insurance fraud. Do you have any idea what that is? Austin adjusted his glasses again. For some reason, the colonel considered everyone below him in rank and position to be feeble-minded. The trouble was that Austin really liked his profession, except that he wanted to investigate more than accidental deaths and age-related deaths, where everything was clear. Insurance? The interrogator interjected. There's even a separate article in our code for this. Well done. I never doubted you, said the colonel. Pay attention. Secret. That's how much I trust you. Don't show anyone either the assignment itself or what you dig up. Sign here in the journal. Your deadline is 3 days. When the chief left the office, Austin decided to finish writing the resolution. He printed it out and took it to the clerk's office. Here in the department, any documents had to be transmitted only through trained people. Then he returned to the order. I read the dry text. In principle, the task could be accomplished not only in a day, but in 5 minutes, without leaving the office. But how do they write? Dry, bureaucratic language. Austin read aloud the fragment that was the worst perceived. As a result of the investigation of illegal activities of insurance companies, the senior investigator of the investigation department found. So, investigation. The interests of the widow of Nicholas Mertz are represented by a lawyer with an expired license. The beneficiary must be thoroughly interviewed, and it must be ascertained that his application was valid. In fact, all he has to do is make a report of the interrogation of one single person. And since the investigator assigned it to the district inquiry, there's really nothing to catch. The woman must have been searched for, but either not found or she refused to go somewhere and explain anything. But what language, motherfucker? Who is a beneficiary? The inquirer thought. Someone who gains a benefit. Then why not write widow? Austin knew the answer to that question very well. Whoever had drafted the document wanted to appear very clever, so that the executor would have to type a new word into Google to find out its meaning. The whole query was full of just such turns that could be simplified. This is the trademark style of those who want to appear smarter than they really are. What happened to her husband? The inquirer said aloud. He found a ruling in the database. There was a whole investigative team working on it. It turns out that the arrogant Nicholas Mertz, ignoring the warning of the storm, went with his daughter to some tourist site in Chicago. Both were washed out to sea. What a drama! The coroner imagined he was the one assigned to investigate such a case. In a separate file, Austin typed the surnames, first names, and patronymics of all the people involved and entered them into a table. It appeared that Selena had been left all alone after the tragic accident. She used to be registered in their neighborhood, but now, according to the real estate database, the woman had gotten rid of the apartment. She must have changed her cell phone, and she certainly wouldn't want to talk to some interrogator and spill her guts about how she'd hired a lawyer with an expired license. Nicholas Mertz was a strange man too. Shortly before his marriage, he had changed his last name for something. He used to be Kearns. Paradoxically, neither the first nor the second name in the databases had nothing at all. No cell phone, no driver's license, no employment records, no medical records. It was as if he didn't even exist. Very interesting, Austin said aloud and continued his search. So, this Mertz was born in Berlin, but under the third name Ivanov. This was evident from the information about his parents. They must have served in the Soviet army and been sent to Germany. The lucky ones. Who would now remember that Soviet soldiers had left the center of Europe a little over 30 years ago? This same Nicholas must have somehow managed to stay in Germany. Maybe his mother was an ethnic German. There were no answers, but the story fascinated him. Anyway, he found his death in the United States. Austin was already preparing to write a report that it was impossible to establish Selena Litkina's whereabouts. She had been evicted from her apartment. Her neighbors did not know her new phone number. She had no relatives in the USA. But as soon as he dialed the phone, there were long beeps in the receiver, and when a woman's voice answered, Austin was even a little confused. The train was already approaching the Washington station, when suddenly, where had her wallet disappeared to? She was sure to take it out and put the ticket in there. Robbed, Selena shouted, wiping away her tears. They took the last of the money. She was consoled by the conductor and a fellow traveler, giving her advice. In the purse that the psychic had stolen, there were credit cards already useless, discount cards, and $300 was the rest of her finances. What's she gonna do now? Good thing she'd stashed one bill. Nothing is nothing, the conductor said, putting her hand on the girl's shoulder. We'll get off at once and write a statement. We'll find this bastard. We'll find him, that's for sure. I've already buried my family, the girl wailed. And now this. There is no justice on earth. After getting off the train, the woman actually walked towards the police room. But something made her freeze. Standing on the platform of the station, Selena realized with horror that madness was coming to her. How else to explain that in the window of the train, which was about to move, she saw Maria. The girl stood with her face pressed against the glass, looking at something on the platform. If it was a ghost, it was a very strange one. Because Maria was much older than the girl she remembered. Selena sobbed, covering her eyes with her hand. Now she would see her daughter everywhere. She would go completely insane, and she would never be able to go back to normal. She should never have gone to that fortune teller. Madness is contagious. Once you touch it, you'll come back again and again. The old woman must have behaved in such a way that she would come back again and again to spend the night in the gazebo, lying on the mat. The woman looked up. The vision had only worsened. Now Michael was standing beside Maria, also looking at the platform. This ghost had changed a little too, a different hair color. When they lived together, her husband asked her to call him Peter in the European manner, which amused Selena. They loved each other so much. She wanted to push the fog away from her, but it wouldn't go away. Tears filled her eyes. The horn sounded and the train started, picking up speed. Maria and Michael's ghosts were leaving for New York on the Sapsan. Selena changed her mind about going to the police station, and since she had almost no money left, she had to buy the cheapest ticket on a regular train. The one that takes forever to move and stops wherever it goes. That solved another problem though. She'd arrive early in the morning and could walk around all day before returning to her parents' house. Call. Interrogator Austin, line division, said a man's voice. Am I speaking to Selena Litkin? Yes, the woman replied. My purse was stolen, but I didn't report it. The conductor must have told you. You stole a wallet? The interviewer was surprised. Then go to the nearest police station immediately. I can take care of it myself. Selena cut her off. What are you calling about? You see, said the policeman, I have an important errand to run, and I need to question you. Are you ever in New York? Yes, Selena answered, trying to speak calmly. I actually live there. The thing is that in the database the apartment is registered to another person, the interrogator said. That's why I thought you had moved. It's not the only apartment, Selena said. So what did you want? She liked the policeman's voice, so deep and raspy. It could only belong to a very brave man. Could you visit me today? He asked. I'll be there until 8 o'clock this evening, but I can stay longer than that. Let's do it tomorrow, Selena suggested. First thing in the morning. Dictate an address. For some reason, her mood improved. The woman wanted to meet this interrogator with a beautiful voice, to go somewhere with him. Probably, if such a man were around, she would never have had her phone stolen in her life. Washington was still herself, a gloomy, bustling, and unfriendly city. There was no room for love, tenderness, or romance, if it weren't for death. Their relationship had long since reached an impasse, a dead end from which there was no escape, no return. She knew it, but there was nothing she could do about it. Selena kept putting off a serious conversation, and then it was too late. Michael was gone, though her heart refused to accept it and kept insisting that he was alive. Nicholas was secretly proud of himself. His ability to improvise always allowed him to solve the most difficult problems. And now, going to New York from the Czech Republic, he only in general terms imagined how to take the money. His own money, by the way, earned in a relatively honest way. But as he got closer to his goal, the plan became clearer and clearer. Man has no path, there is only a goal, he told himself. Alas, there was no one to share his criminal achievements with. All hope on the charming Maria, who was growing up next to him. Yes, he would definitely be able to teach her his craft. For that, she would have to learn and understand a lot. He'd like her to be involved in operations where there's little risk. Otherwise, she'd get addicted to adrenaline like he did, and then she wouldn't be able to do without it. Yesterday he was Peter, and before that Archie, and before that Victor. But the last time, faking his own death was harder. Yes, he wanted to leave Selena. He was sick and tired of her. But what about Maria? It wasn't the girl's fault. He wanted to take his daughter with him. The plan was complex, daring, and risky, and so it worked. For the whole world, they were dead. Of course, he should have done it earlier, when Maria was 2. He was getting too many questions about her mom. The girl at first refused to believe that Celine had betrayed them, but in time, he convinced the child. Besides, the girl liked traveling, flying on the plane, and she didn't have to strain herself to get into character. Nicholas noticed that with a child, documents are not checked as carefully as if he was traveling alone. Now the final push and the big score was in their pocket. Sometimes it happens that fate itself puts signs in your path. You just have to look at them and take them for yourself. And yesterday, as soon as he saw a pretty woman, tactfully called a girl, at the reception desk, he realized that it was fate. She looked too much like her. Did he love Selena? Initially, he needed her for another scam that would only be conquered by a family man. Then he made the mistake of getting too deep into the role. But everything went even better than desired. Not only pulled off the case, but also became a happy father. So fate sent him Barbara like it did Selena. A beautiful, intelligent, gentle girl. Also shy and modest, the kind that fell in love with him especially quickly. We'll have to use it, Nicholas thought. And then? Well, then what? Throw it away, trample it, erase it from my memory. Austin had a great memory for faces. If he saw a person once, he could easily find him in a crowd. The main thing was to remember when and for what purpose the person was needed. The inquirer liked to go to work on foot, all the more so because the department was not far from the room that had become his temporary shelter 5 years ago and then became permanent. Walking not only saved some of his modest salary, one could enjoy the sights of New York. This beautiful and gloomy city was one of his greatest affections. Today's story was still on his mind. What a villainous fate, so ruthlessly dealt with a handsome man and a girl. Walking home past the seafront, in front of the popular hotel with the poetic name North Wind, Austin saw an idyllic picture. At a table sat, as it seemed to him, a couple in love. Except, where had he seen the man's face? The interrogator stopped to get a better look at the family. He had to cross the road. I have so much to do. Austin thought, I have to run this stupid errand, and then I have to do the inspections over and over again. But he crossed the road anyway. Coffee cost a fortune in a place like this, but cigarettes were the same price as in the store. The pack of his favorite brand was running out, so he decided to do something useful, both to buy cigarettes and to satisfy his curiosity. But when Austin approached, he saw something amazing and couldn't believe his eyes, and he was glad he wasn't wearing a police uniform. I'll get her out, the interrogator thought, pulling out his cell phone. Luckily, it was the cell phone he'd used to call Selena. The call went off. Trying not to give away his excitement, Austin stared at the woman beside the man he had identified without error, Nicholas Mertz. Strange man, Celine thought. They seemed to have agreed that she would visit the department early in the morning, but a few hours later, Austin dialed her again around 10 o'clock at night while she was shaking in a train car and asking some stupid questions. Now his voice wasn't so appealing anymore. The policeman, on the other hand, was waiting for his guest the way something very good waits. Interrogators are always at the bottom of the law enforcement hierarchy. Austin had heard condescending remarks directed at him so often over the years that he should have gotten used to them, but not this time. Fate gave him a unique chance to prove that he was worth something too, or maybe a step higher. Suddenly, the door opened without knocking. I'm probably at a bad time. At the threshold of the office stood a woman who was still quite young and pretty. According to the instructions, everyone who comes to the office must be noted by the inspector on duty. Clarify the purpose of the visit and call the calling party. Apparently, Celine had managed to get in unnoticed. Come in, he said to his guest. Have a seat. What do I owe you? She asked. Not only did you call, you called twice. I'm very intrigued by you. Instead of answering, Austin pulled out his phone, on which he took several pictures of Nicholas, or whatever his name is, with his family. Zoomed in on the face of the woman with the scarf. Looked like Selena, but definitely not her. Or was this all a con man's cunning plan? Austin didn't trust anyone. Tell me, please, the interrogator began. Where is your husband now? The guest's face turned crimson. She seemed angry, but she held back. Then hope flashed in her eyes. Then distrust. The silence lengthened, but Austin decided not to break it. How else would he get this lady to come clean? I don't know. Selena exhaled. I buried him over a year ago. But the coffin was empty. They say his car was swept out to sea by a wave. Patience ran out, and the guest began to sob. She wailed so much that Alex looked in from the next room to make sure no one needed help. Austin made a gesture with his hand. Go away. The guest calmed down. So you haven't seen your spouse since the day he went missing? The police officer continued his inquiry. At that moment, Selena's anger reappeared on her face. She jumped up from her chair, ran right up to Austin, and blasted him in the face. I knew, of course, that not the most. Intellectually gifted people go into the service. But this, I couldn't have imagined it. My husband is missing, along with my little girl. Your colleagues investigated the case. Wasn't it hard to ask for the files? Austin adjusted his glasses. It was hard for him to keep a nonchalant expression on his face, but it was worth it. He was trying to figure out if it was possible to play that kind of emotion. Probably not. I requested it, the inquirer replied. The case is still open. Then why all these silly questions? The woman shouted. To make me suffer. At this point, the interrogator realized that the exegesis could be stopped. If she was acting, she was very talented. But most likely, Selena really didn't know anything about her husband's fate. Besides, the policeman really wanted to brag about his talents and luck. After all, how else to explain his fantastic luck? I believe your spouse survived, the interrogator said in a nonchalant tone. Really? The woman asked hopefully and wiped away her tears. But why? Why do you think so? Because I found it, Austin smiled and held out his phone to her. Here, look. Selena looked at the screen and the world around her swam. It was a good thing she was sitting up, or she would have collapsed to the ground. She easily recognized Nicholas, her pet, though his appearance had changed a bit. Though his hair was new and his nose looked a little longer, it was him. The oval of his face, his eyes, his mouth, the same one who had complimented her relentlessly and swore eternal love. It can't be, whispered Celine. It can't be. And you don't recognize this woman? The interrogator asked. He zoomed in on the screen in front of the stranger's face. She didn't even catch Selena's eye right away. There was a woman looking at her from the screen who reminded her of someone. Who? White hair, red-rimmed glasses. Oh, that's... Oh my God! Selena wondered, wiping her hair. It's me, isn't it? I mean, she looks like me. It can't be. This lady must have kidnapped them. She's pretending to be me, playing me for a fool. We need to apprehend her now. You need to apprehend her now. I'll prove that I'm the real Selena. The interrogator coughed and adjusted his glasses. On the one hand, he wanted to laugh. On the other, he had to keep his temper in check. He had almost solved the crime that would finally get his career off the ground. It was a string of atrocities. I have some bad news for you, Selena, Austin exhaled. Your ex-husband is not who he says he is. He's a talented con man. No, replied the visitor. It's a mistake. It's an accident. Come on, arrest this woman. Arrest her immediately. You can see she's a divorcee. Understand, I am a simple interrogator, the policeman said. Of course, I have no experience in investigating such cases, but I doubt your word very much. All indications are that Peter Mertz is the real liar here. By the way, he has a different name now. The guest began to sob again. The interrogator was surprised at her reserve of emotions. He himself could not have reacted so violently to such news. Of course, he should have drawn up a protocol of interrogation, a report, recorded the photo on disk, and sent it all to the investigation as soon as possible. Better yet, detain Peter. I don't understand anything anymore, the woman said. And by the way, I have deceived you. I have absolutely nowhere to stay in St. Petersburg. I have no apartment anymore. Here's what we'll do, Celine, Austin said after a brief thought. His plan wasn't flawless, of course, but it seemed reasonable. For the first time since Michael's disappearance, she felt interested in and attracted to a man. His proposal made Selena blush, and she thought that she could hardly hold herself back. Selena heard a drunken voice from down the long hallway. He's brought a woman, finally. Never mind, Austin said, showing her the direction. That's right, the locals, that's right. Pay no attention, beautiful stranger, shouted the drunken man. Pashka, well done, way to go. The interrogator blushed thickly. He rented a room in a relic of a bygone era. Selena looked with interest at one of the last of the St. Petersburg communal houses. High ceilings, carved windows, moldings and peeling potty, and skeins of wires running along the walls, and the musty smell of a room that needs to be renovated, but is easier to tear down. I'm still lucky. Austin smiled as they walked in. There's no mold in my room. Make yourself comfortable. Selena looked around. Finding a spare seat in this room was no easy task. There was a couch along the longest wall. Opposite it was an old closet. The rest of the room was occupied by a desk with a computer and some sort of kitchenette. Both the floor and the glass had not been cleaned for a long time. Austin blushed even more as he intercepted his guest's gaze, who was scrutinizing the dirt and grease. "It's just temporary," he said. "Here, I'm taking it off until they give me a work permit." "How long has it been out?" Selena asked out of politeness. "It's been 6 years," shrugged the interrogator. "How do we do it?" "First it's the cops, then family." "What, they don't give it at all?" asked the guest. "No," Austin answered and blushed again. "Is it still about the apartments?" She smiled. It was a weak joke, but it was something. Selena looked at the policeman because there was nothing else to look at. A good-looking man, neat and intelligent. It must be hard for him to work in the police force. Can't even get a decent apartment. I wish he had a wife. "I'm sorry for the details, but I'm after the road," Selena said. "I need to wash up." "Come on, I'll walk you out," the policeman offered. "We've got an old house here, and there's no chance of anything happening." In the communal room, there was a large kitchen block, and just behind it were showers and toilets. It was possible to wash behind a curtain with no doors or latches. She was a little embarrassed, but she still had no choice. The last time she had washed herself properly was 3 days ago at a roadside inn. "I could get a room," Selena said timidly, "if I'm embarrassing you." "No, no, no, not at all," replied the policeman. "Don't worry, I'll turn around. Besides, you can't see anything through the curtain anyway." In fact, Selena couldn't get a room. The money had been stolen, and the remaining sum wouldn't even be enough for a bed in a hostel. She couldn't even think of what to do next. She couldn't pay back the loan after she mortgaged the property. Go back to her parents. No, we need to get to the bottom of this whole story first. Is her daughter really alive? Selena turned on the water. The faucet made a sound like devils howling from the underworld. She remembered the mysterious visit to the fortune teller, after which she had decided to return to New York. Her grandmother Julianne had been right. Was it luck, coincidence, or a secret gift? The water from the faucet was barely warm, but Selena still felt pleasure. She was washing away not only the dirt, but also the past. Soon she would get her daughter back, find answers to all her questions, and live happily ever after. "I wonder," Selena thought, "is that man looking at me through the curtain, staring?" There was no mirror here, but she realized that she looked good. Constant movement and lack of appetite had given her back her slim figure. She had naturally nice hips and neat breasts, and a pretty face too. Perhaps this flush policeman could solve one more of her problems, not just give her a place to sleep. "Austin," Selena said, peeking out from behind the curtain, "pass me a towel." The interrogator glanced at her, adjusted his glasses, and blushed again. She herself made her breasts appear from behind the curtain, as if by accident. Let him look around and appreciate his good fortune. Selena wiped herself all over, applied scented oil to her body, and put on fresh linen. She had to put her jeans and blouse back on, since the way to her room was across the hall. "What a blessing," she said when they got back to the room. "Austin, what are you doing for dinner?" "Well," the interrogator stretched out, "I usually eat a bun with kefir, and you, if you want, you can boil your own pasta. Or buckwheat. I've got a lot of stuff to choose from, don't be shy." Selena opened the bachelor's refrigerator. Not much. Chicken eggs, melted cheese, and in the freezer there was a chicken fillet. Pasha had a multi-cooker in his room, surprisingly clean. He probably didn't use it very often. Selena finally chopped the frozen fillet, fried it, then added water and boiled the pasta right in it. When the water evaporated, she cracked a chicken egg into it and tossed in some cheese slices. It was good. "It's delicious," said Austin, eating the pasta with delight. "It's delicious." You see, Austin, what one woman can do: cook a meal and warm a bed. "No, I'll go to a friend's place," the interrogator said embarrassedly. "I have a friend living in the next room. He has a bunk bed. And you sleep. Don't be shy." "Don't be silly," Selena said. "I can see that this couch folds out. I can cook more than just pasta, you know." She hugged his arm and began rubbing his muscles. The cop appeared to be a trained pleasant to hold, but Austin gently reached his hand out. Then she put her arm around his shoulders and tried to fondle him. "No," he said. "No, you don't. I can't do that." "Am I ugly?" Selena said indignantly. "You don't like me." "You do," Austin replied. "It's just, I'm at work. Why don't you guys go to bed? I'll be right back." Embarrassed, he stalked out of his room. Yes, this was not how he had envisioned an evening in the company of this woman. But no, one must not give in to temptation, work first. In the evening, he had sent an urgent request to the insurance company and would soon receive a reply. He also requested the details of all the guests at the hotel with the poetic name. There was only one man and a girl. That's how Austin got the con man's new name. This crook would hardly wait long. Every new day was a risk for him. Walking towards the showers, Austin slammed himself on his pocket. He had forgotten his phone in the room. He thought it was no big deal, but he was wrong. Insurers are fat cats, Nicholas liked to tell his daughter Maria. "If you only knew how much money they make from our fears." "Fear of what?" the girl asked. She was bright, of course, but not as bright as her father would have liked to think. "On the fear of death," explained Nicholas. "Loss, bankruptcy. But that's okay, baby. I'll pay them back for all the wrongs done to me. You'll see, they'll make a movie about me. Your daddy's a real hero." "Daddy, why did you change your name?" the girl asked. "I told you it was a big secret," hissed the man, clearly losing patience. "Please don't bring it up. Daddy's name is Nicholas, okay? His plan is on the home stretch. Now, all that's left to do is cash out. Some might say this scheme is crazy. It started with a standardized plan. Insure himself and his daughter for a tidy sum. All inclusive. Accident or natural disaster. Overseas or domestic maximum coverage. Then fake your own death. And your daughter's death, of course. The next thing was interesting. His wife knew nothing about his devious plan or his supposed death. What's more, she didn't even know about the insurance. All correspondence with the company after the accident was handled by Mickey's lawyer. And if the company had decided to contact the widow, everything would have fallen apart. But the con man knew that wouldn't happen. Even an experienced investigator wouldn't recognize this man as Nicholas, or Peter, for that matter. Instead of a thick head of hair, an unsightly bald spot. A ridiculous belly that's about to rip a button out of his shirt. Then there's the freckles, the blue eyes, the jutting jaw. "Could you please come to the office?" his employee politely asked him over the phone. "Oh," Mickey replied, "my client has no money at all. And my time, costs a lot of money. But we need a personal presence." The employee did not back down. "I apologize, but I sent all the documents," the lawyer said. In addition, according to Article 28, Paragraph 1, and Nicholas began to recite from memory the legal provisions according to which communication with the insurer can be conducted remotely. That the client has a right to privacy, which is why he hired a lawyer. That you should respect other people's feelings. The employee on the other end of the line sighed, but kept her line. "You see," said the girl, It is required by the security service. Look carefully, it's written in the contract. Mickey only smiled slyly. He had foreseen this scenario a long time ago. He'd been prepared for it for a long time. Well, the lawyer sighed. Let's do it this way. Next week, when I have a window between trials, I'll let you know. In advance, of course. But that kind of mistrust, of course, makes it impossible for me to speak favorably of your company from now on. Mickey's a highly sought-after lawyer, so it was up to the head of the benefits department to accommodate him. A very busy man, he was only able to visit the office on Wednesday, the third day after he and his daughter arrived in New York. You should see the way Mickey moves. He's got the walk of a winner, a master of life. The kind of man who can afford to look the way he wants to look. I don't have much time, the lawyer said together with a greeting as he entered the office. Have you done the paperwork yet? Yes, of course, the man replied. You realize how much money this is, even for our company. Ho ho ho, laughed Mickey. Tell me something about the big money. I know your whole company like the back of my hand. How you like to challenge even the tiniest payout in court. Yes, but try to get a word in edgewise with the insurer. I'm still surprised you didn't make my client swear on the Bible. The lawyer pressed him. The man had suffered such grief. Luckily, I did a legal review of the contract myself. There were no grounds for refusal. It's about a client, the department head said, as soon as his guest was silent for a second. She has to sign the documents herself. It's a security requirement. If you don't agree, go to court. There was silence. Mickey weighed the words of his interlocutor on his fingertips. Well, said the lawyer to the head of the benefits department, my client is depressed with grief. I don't know if she can come in person. Give me 1 minute, I'll call her. Without waiting for an answer, the lawyer went out into the corridor. From behind the door, the insurer could hear the lawyer explaining something emotionally to his interlocutor. His voice was beautiful and well practiced, so you wouldn't want to argue. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. I talked. It's just a formality, the insurance company representative said. All she has to do is sign and she'll get her money. Right away. Oh, there you go, stretched out Mickey. I talked the client into it. Yes, it's quite possible. But I'm begging you, please be considerate. A man has lost the most precious thing in his life, his husband, and his daughter, of course. And then there's this. Yes, yes, said the delighted insurer. Selena insists that the 100 million must be given in cash. Contact the bank and have them encash the amount in the largest denominations. But the warden was surprised. It's not a storage facility, actually. I insist, the lawyer said firmly. She wants to carry kilos of money, for God's sake. It's not your concern, and I will take the denial of this small request of an inconsolable widow as a personal insult. Let me know when you're ready, I've got to go. Mickey didn't even shake his hand, but walked toward the door with a victorious gait. Soon he would receive a tidy sum and head back to his hideout in the Czech Republic. Nicholas, alias Peter, alias Mickey, was sure that his plan was doomed to success. If only the con man could know how wrong he was. Using his powers of authority and a semi-secret assignment, Austin got the whole story. So, this Nicholas Peter wants to pull off a noble scam. He faked his own death, and to avert suspicion from himself and the death of his daughter. He took out an insurance policy so his wife wouldn't even know about it. He corresponded on behalf of the lawyer and made it look as if the inconsolable widow herself did not want to see anyone. What a hard worker, the interrogator said with delight. Yes, he deserves respect. I'm sure the scam wasn't the only one. Austin had received information about the conman's current data even earlier. As is customary for foreigners, they were sent to the local police department, and they're carefully placed in the database where they could be accessed by any employee if necessary. Austin was faced with a difficult choice. On the one hand, he had to inform his boss that a trivial three-letter agency assignment had solved a serious crime. On the other hand, he could take all the credit for the tracker to someone else. No, that's not what he'll do. Like a hunter, he would rush fearlessly at his prey and throw it at the criminal's feet. "You should be lucky," the interrogator said to the invisible interlocutor. After that sleepover, she never asked him for help again. Luck likes preparation, and I've been preparing for it for 10 years, no less. So he now knew the exact day and hour when the crook's accomplice would come for the money. Friday, 4:00 p.m., give or take. The interrogator decided to rent a car share for the day to go out. He didn't have his own car, of course. Park across the street at 2:00. And wait. To ambush him, Austin took a day off work. His boss looked at him with round eyes, but the interrogator was adamant. "I apologize," Austin said, adjusting his glasses. "But I've got a month's worth of time off. I'm only asking for 1 day." "And what is it that you want to do so badly?" For the first time in the years of their acquaintance, a slight smile ran across his face. "Is it really a woman?" "You guessed it," said the interrogator. "She came here, a woman from out of town. She asks me to take her to the historical center, to take her to the bridge. Well, you get the picture." "All right," said the boss, "but just 1 day. And to come to work as usual at 7:40. Is that clear?" "That's right," Austin replied. When he got to his room in the communal apartment, he couldn't calm down for a long time. He replayed the smallest details of his operation in his head. How he would take down the crook. From the back, of course. How he'd put the bracelets on him, load him into a car share car. Of course, police regulations required at least 2 officers to both apprehend and escort criminals. But sometimes instructions could be ignored. Austin also longed for Selena. Why didn't I give her what she wanted yesterday? He thought, I'd basically wanted the same thing. However, as soon as he apprehends the crook and solves the most complicated crime alone, he is sure to get a promotion, and with it a raise in salary, a nice apartment and women. It is only necessary to be a little patient. With these thoughts, the policeman fell asleep and woke up only by the alarm clock. The interrogator could not wait. He immediately rented a car, not some budget Volkswagen Polo, but a luxury red Ford Mustang. It didn't have car share stickers on it, so it would attract a little less attention. Plus, this car had no rear doors, so the twisted criminal wouldn't be able to get away with it. Although the interrogator had originally planned to set up an ambush at 2:00 in the afternoon, he decided not to delay. Already at 10:00 in the morning, his Ford was parked across the street from the office of the insurance company. He decided not to eat at all, but to drink water in small sips, so that his physiological needs would not become an obstacle to his triumph. Austin sat in the car and waited. It turns out that ambushes are very tiring. There were dozens and hundreds of people walking past him. It wasn't the busiest place, but New York was never empty. He watched them, trying to memorize details. The seat in the car was very comfortable, and even after 2 hours from the beginning of the ambush, neither his back nor his legs hurt. From time to time, the policeman started the engine and turned on the massage mode. Yeah, he thought, if I were to sit in an ambush, it would be in a vehicle like this. It's a dream. Well, soon he'll be able to afford a nice car too. Maybe he'll even have a driver in his new position. Not a personal driver, of course, but that's okay. So he could dial him and say, "Jack, 5 minutes." He was snapped out of his pleasant thoughts by a strange picture. No way. Austin, an interrogator with 8 years' experience, couldn't believe his eyes. Into the office of the insurance company walked Selena. She was looking around restlessly, and she also wore glasses. But having seen the face once, he would never forget this woman. It's only 1:00 in the afternoon. What was she doing in the office? Austin got out of the car, ran across the road, and lurked at the side. He pretended to watch his smartphone, though he hadn't even unlocked the screen. It had been quite a while, 30 or 40 minutes, when a woman came out of the office. She was holding 2 large bags in her hands, and judging by the change in her gait, it was hard for her to walk. The interrogator followed her. There can be no doubt she took the money herself. How did he miss the widow? The triumph of her apprehension could hardly compare with the capture of the ringleader. The husband must have risen from the dead and persuaded his wife to help him. Well, we must act. The interrogator quickened his pace. Selena, Austin said as he approached his ward. Svetochka, where are you going? The woman set down her bags and turned around. There was no worry, fear, or doubt on her face. Just a huge smile from ear to ear. Suddenly, Selena raised her hand so sharply that Austin didn't even have time to blink an eye, and the light went out for the inquirer. Selena now felt deceived twice. First, it turned out that her hubby wasn't dead, and then the interrogator, who looked like an ordinary nerd, was squeamish about her gorgeous body. She's still full of life. So Selena decided she had to do something on her own. Finding Peter was easy. All the information she needed was in the inquirer's cell phone. When he denied her sex and retreated, he'd forgotten it. Plus, his screen lock is a simple zipper. That's the first thing that popped into her head. In a separate file that was in the open apps, she found a notepad where her and her husband's details were written. Even the name of the hotel and the room. Getting past the desk clerk proved to be an easy task. She just walked forward toward the stairs and no one called out to her. It must not be customary to ask guests questions. When she got to the 3rd floor, she was lucky again. Walking down the hallway was her husband. She ran up to him and slapped him in the face. Peter stood there like a thunderstruck man. It wasn't her who saw the dead man, it was him. He rubbed his cheek and remained silent. He hadn't changed a bit. He was still handsome. How could she not have noticed that wormhole in him? How could she have come up with such a plan? And all for what? For money. Well, Selena said, looking at her husband, that's how you are with me. I've already buried you, and you're safe and sound. The man was confused. His eyes ran left and right down the corridor. Let's move away, he said, and pulled her to the side. But the woman pulled away and pushed him away. No. Selena was indignant. I have to see her. To see my daughter. The one you took from me. Svetochka, he said in a languid voice. It's a very long, scary and fantastic story. I don't even know how to convince you to believe me. I'm guilty, yes guilty, but not in the way you might think. I'm in no hurry, the woman replied. Come on, tell me your fantastic story, before I call the police to put you in jail. How did you find me? He asked. Peter, aka. Nicholas, aka. Mickey, couldn't understand what he'd done wrong. He knew that his ex-girlfriend had left Peter. He was convinced that they would never cross paths in this huge city. And Selena kept silent. She didn't want to tell him about the interrogator. The insurance company called me, she blurted out. Peter's face twisted in a grimace of rage and fear. He turned pale and his lips turned blue. What did you tell them? He asked in a whisper. Nothing, the woman shrugged. Said I'd be sure to get the money. I don't need it, you know. Thank God, he exhaled. You sure you didn't say anything? No, Selena replied, and decided to change the unpleasant subject. So that's all you care about. What about my feelings? Peter smiled. His face brightened, his lips red again, and his eyes. It seemed to her that they were filled with love again. He took her elbow in a gentle gesture. She couldn't find the strength to push him away. She wanted to burst into tears, but the woman pulled herself together. Let's go outside, he asked. Let's go for a walk, have some coffee. No, Selena cut Selena off. I have to go inside right now, to look at her. Maria is asleep, Peter said. Please listen to me. Did you know that I was thinking about you? For example, you sold the apartment. So you followed me. The woman was surprised. Not sold, but mortgaged. It doesn't matter, my husband said. I mean, I was going to come out to you myself. In just a few days. When they went outside, they were immediately blown away by the cold St. Petersburg wind. It's no different here. They crossed the road and sat down in one of the coffee shops. I don't understand one thing, Selena said. What kind of husband are you to me, ex-husband or not? I'm officially a widow, by your grace. Don't scold me, Peter asked. You'll find out now. A little sooner than I expected, and he did tell her a story. As fantastic as Julienne's grandmother's story, but as Selena listened to her husband, she believed him more and more, and by the end of the story she doubted everything but Peter's honesty. Gradually, her eyes returned to normal. Some kind-hearted people brought him to the toilet of the cafe, where the interrogator washed his face for a long time. The pain was unbearable, but the cause was not a chemical burn. No, with Selena, his career rushed past him, and she'd blasted him in the face like a wild animal. But the problems didn't end there. Pulling out his cell phone, Austin saw a dozen missed calls. He couldn't hear the calls because he had set his smartphone to silent mode. They were dialed by the same person who signed his name simply as Chief. Had someone reported to the police that an unknown woman had sprayed tear gas in a police officer's face? Hello, said the interrogator, trying to put a relaxed tone to his voice. What's up, slacker? Roared the chief. Have you had enough of your women? Not yet, replied Austin. What happened? What's wrong? The warden shrieked. He's still asking. To the department, quickly. The interrogator had no way of knowing where he was. He even had to turn on the navigator to figure it out. Yeah, right next to the insurance office. Someone must have seen it when that woman sprayed gas in his face and helped him to the bathroom. His eyes were still watering, so Austin didn't want to drive the rental car. He called a cab. The interrogator walked into the department, looking like he was going to the scaffold. What do I do? Deny it. He'll never admit he was trying to catch a con man. There's no report, no paperwork. It's all in his head. He'll write a detailed report that he decided to follow a suspicious woman and she sprayed him in the face. Hello, Austin said innocently, walking into the supervisor's office. You wanted to see me? Surprisingly, the colonel was sitting modestly in his chair, and on the chair of the head sat some red-haired man, and not just sitting, but throwing his feet on the table, unheard of impertinence. Showed up, said the warden. Hero lover, you've had enough, haven't you? Look who's here for you. Austin looked at the red-haired man. He didn't look like a very nice man. A crumpled sweater, a shabby jacket, boots with huge soles. But since he not only took the chair of the chief, but also threw his feet on the table, the man is not easy. It was evident from the prickly eyes. Hello, the little man said, removing his feet. Hello, replied the interrogator. With whom do I have that honor? It's Fox, said the warden, and turn off your pontoon cutter. A fox. Austin was surprised. It looked human. That's my call sign, the man explained. Does Fox have a name? The interrogator insisted. Names are not allowed for operatives, said the guest, standing up. Oh, you screwed up, Captain. You screwed up. The colonel took out a handkerchief and began to wipe his face restlessly. Sweat was dripping from his forehead. So not only did they know about his shame, Austin must have violated something that made the three-letter office come to the house in person, and all alone. I don't know what you're talking about, the interrogator shrugged. I got the day off today. I'll do whatever I want. Shut up, shouted the colonel. Are you playing games here? You and I are no longer in the same boat. I've said it all. That this is amateur hour, from start to finish. You're no longer with us, Austin. Am I fired? Austin asked. He felt sick to his stomach. Fired. Fox mocked him and strode toward the door. He grabbed the handle. Did you think you'd get off that easy? Follow me quickly. I'm not going, the inquirer said. I'm not going anywhere. Go on, take care of yourself, the operative replied. Yes, go, the chief put an end to his ambitions. Go yourself, or I'll tell our people and they'll bring you out in bracelets. To be honest, I would have thrown you in the monkey house. It was only now that Austin realized the gravity of what was happening. It seems he's not just fired anymore. Would the policeman of yesterday now become a prisoner? Austin felt scared and sweaty. Selena took the interrogator down with ease. Her hand was being pulled by the gigantic sum of $1 million. Yeah, Peter's plan was good. How clever of him to set her up to suffer, grief-stricken, and so that no one would ever think that her emotions might not be real. What a scoundrel, thought Selena. I almost lost my mind. And still what a man. He rented her an apartment 2 blocks from the insurance office, and she had already met Maria. The girl said some strange things to her. She even looked at her with suspicion. Well, that's okay. The baby will get used to it. It's good that they're together again. Now she has money. And put it in the bank? I don't think you can carry that kind of money on board. It went like clockwork. Selena blurted out as she entered the apartment. Did you take it? Her husband asked seriously. Selena wanted to hug and caress him, but he gently pushed her away and took the bag of money in his hand. He weighed it, figuring out how much cash there was. How did you get there? Peter said. That's a heavy burden. Yeah, Selena replied. I'm exhausted. I thought I'd be right back. And there we'd be. What about the policeman? My husband asked. How did you get around him? Just like you said, the woman grinned. Pepper spray in the eyes. When he went for his face, I sprayed some more. And then some more. He's probably still waking up. Look, I'm such a criminal. Why don't we make this quick, honey? Yes, it's a serious article, Peter said thoughtfully, ignoring her words. He continued to admire the stacks of $5,000 bills. Assault on a police officer. Yes, with bodily harm. That's, real time. I've been waiting for you, Selena said. I'd had a lot of people asking for me, I knew you were alive. I took care of myself, But Peter's attention was consumed with money. He couldn't believe his scam had gone so easily. What remained was not the hardest part, but the time-consuming part, getting it all out of the country. He already had a plan. This time, he'd have to be honest. His search company would buy nearly $100 million worth of luxury goods from the US, smuggle it out to Europe. Why aren't you talking, my love? Selena asked. I'm talking to you. I'm sorry, I got distracted, Peter smiled. I wanted to tell you what a great job you did. You did great, just like we discussed. I've been trying to talk you into it for half an hour, said the woman. I haven't had sex in over a year, and you're not even listening to me. Oh, I'm sorry, my husband replied, and something in his face changed. Take a shower, sweetie. I'll get everything ready. Let's not rush into anything. Selena glared. Of course, he might not be so capricious and take her as is. But a shower wouldn't hurt. She wanted to wash away the horror of the past months. Burying her own husband and daughter, she was on the verge of despair. Peter had rented a nice apartment. The bathroom was state-of-the-art. She opened the shower door and pressed the massage mode, and small streams of water immediately rushed into her from all sides. It felt good. Selena remembered washing herself in the communal room a couple days ago and hitting on that policeman. Oh my God, it was disgusting to think about. Was she about to fall into Peter's arms? She rubbed the shampoo on her body and imagined with pleasure how he would caress her. What a man! He'd arranged everything so well. Meanwhile, Peter counted the stacks of money and made sure every dollar was there. Well, he was lucky to have Selena. She was the most honest and decent woman he'd ever met. He'd liked it at first, but then he'd gotten annoyed. A man can't be that good 24/7. At first, he thought of just leaving. Sooner or later, the police would have her in custody. What do they have on him? Nicholas Crass has impeccable credentials. There will be a real diplomatic scandal if he's detained. What's more, he's dead to everyone but this interrogator. But as far as Peter understood from his wife, this policeman was running the operation alone, without informing anyone. When he realizes he's been duped, he'll just throw the ends in the water. Selena struggled to get out of her thoughts and into the shower room. Not only was she clean now, but she smelled so exciting. Peter couldn't help himself. He knocked politely on the door. Oh, how gallant. Still the same. Come in, she called in a languid voice. Come in, my love, and rub my back. Peter took a step inside. He smiled and hid one hand behind his back. There must be a present in there. He stepped closer and held out a towel to her. Selena tossed it aside and showed her body in all its glory. She stroked her sides and hips erotically and tried to make a seductive movement. See how lucky you are to have a baby girl, she said playfully. Yes, he replied, very lucky. I don't know how you're holding back, Selena said. That's a lot of willpower. I thought you were going to grab me right away and carry me to our bed. Patience, the man said. Patience, dear. What are you hiding behind your back? The woman asked. Very interesting. There was silence. Her husband looked at her without taking his eyes off her. She had seen that look before. At times like this, Selena usually shook his hand and asked him, "What are you thinking about?" He never answered. Now the pause lingered. "Goodbye, my love," Peter said and removed his hand from behind his back. Celine's eyes widened with surprise and fear. She suddenly felt cold standing naked in front of the traitor. Fox drove like a real hooligan. He was driving an old Mercedes, which seemed to have a very powerful engine under the hood. The operative maneuvered through the rows, accelerated and braked sharply. He also kept looking at Austin and repeating, "You're in trouble, Captain. Oh, you're in trouble. You're a captain." The interrogator decided not to answer. The fear had passed, and now he had both the will and the desire to act. They wouldn't charge him with anything. After all, he hadn't violated anything. Getting fired was probably the worst thing that could happen, unless something terrible happened. "It's with me," Fox said as they entered a building with huge columns. The main office of the three-letter agency that everyone doesn't like to memorialize. The guard nodded and pressed a button, and the turnstile in front of Pavel turned green. "Go," the operative ordered. "Well, walk. Over there." He pointed to a dark corridor that ended in a metal door. Fox swiped his card, and the lock opened. Austin moved on. To both left and right were doors beyond number. As they walked down the corridor, the interrogator saw an interrogation room, just like in American movies. "What interested?" smiled the operative. "Do you know him?" "First time I've ever seen it," lied the interrogator. "Well, talk, talk," Fox sneered. Behind the glass was Nicholas, aka Peter, aka Mickey, aka God knows who else. So the con man had been apprehended after all. The coroner was relieved. There were two men sitting in front of the con man, questioning him. Fox swiped his card, pressed a button, and could hear what was being said behind the glass. "Attempted murder," one of the investigators stretched out. "Okay, he'd be running his scams like he always does. But no, he's getting wet. You're gonna be in jail for a long time if you don't cooperate with us." "Murder?" Nicholas asked with a slight accent and a smile. "Do you think it's possible to kill with a stun gun?" "Yes, if you hit a wet body in the heart," blurted out the investigator. "You're such a bastard. It's good that this woman has a great health. She'll live." "I don't know what this is about," Nicholas yawned. "Wake me up when my lawyer gets here." The Fox pressed the button again, and the room fell silent. He moved on, and Austin had no choice but to follow. They reached the end of the hallway. There was a video intercom in front of the door. The operative pressed the button, and it was as if his face had changed to a more welcoming one. I brought you, Comrade Colonel. There was a beep and the door opened. They went inside, walked past the reception area, where a pretty girl was sitting, only in a shirt with epaulettes. In the office sat a man with graying temples, curious eyes, and looked at his guest with interest. Well, said the Colonel, the interrogator everyone's talking about. Have a seat, don't be shy. You almost ruined our operation. This is a major project, by the way. Me? The policeman interjected, picking out a chair. Talking to this big man was not like the execution he had so much dreaded. I only wanted to apprehend a crook. Imagine, so did we, said the big boss. It turns out they wanted the same thing. How did we step on each other's tails? Wondered Austin. Agents don't sleep, the operative replied haughtily. What, you thought you could outplay us, huh? We've had everything captured and intercepted for a long time. The Colonel looked at his subordinate with disdain. He didn't seem to like the fact that he was speaking to the guest in such a tone. Tell you what, Fox, said the warden. Go on out the door. Go do your business, and we'll have a little chat. Me? The cop was surprised. What's that? Get out, shouted the Colonel, instantly losing patience. Come on, argue with me, rookie. Leave us two alone, quick. Humiliated, Fox left the office. He looked at the policeman one last time with eyes full of hatred. The Colonel rose from his leather chair and approached Austin, looked carefully into his eyes. The interrogator was embarrassed, took off his glasses, and began to wipe the glasses. Brilliant work, he praised with a smile. I mean it now, without irony. To solve such a crime in just 3 days. It was an accident, said the inquirer. Besides, I missed it. I understand Selena almost died because of me. You missed it because you had neither the forces nor the means, the Colonel said seriously. Remember, every operation requires cover and support. One is not a warrior in the field. Is that clear to you? Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Austin said. How did you find this Peter Nicholas? Where did he go wrong? Still on women, the Colonel grinned. Our swindler began his affair with a certain Barbara, a hotel porter. Initially, he'd offered to play the role of ex-wife to her. And then the real Mrs. Selene got involved. That's your fault, Comrade Captain. Such a valuable witness should be led to the end. Soda, I understand, nodded the Colonel. There weren't enough forces and resources. That's why you should have taken the matter upstairs instead of playing the hero. So when Barbara saw her man with her ex, that's when her patience ran out. And we have a special relationship with hotels. You know, things happen in hotels. They owe us 1,000 times over. I couldn't believe it when I saw the picture. Mertz, my ass. So we played this blitz. And to me, is there a complaint against me? The inquirer asked. No, replied the warden. It was I who asked Fox to deliver you. And he probably got scared. Maybe even showed his badge. Don't pay any attention to him. He's a competent officer, but he's not very discerning when it comes to achieving his goals. Sometimes, I chose his call sign, by the way. What about Selena? The inquirer asked. Did that scoundrel really want to kill her? Imagine that, the Colonel said seriously. He's very, very clever. A stun gun, you know, is not much of a weapon. Unreliable and cumbersome. But it can be used to kill. Of course, it would still have to be proved. Let the investigation work. Well then, Austin said, getting up from his chair. It was nice to meet you, of course, and to get off scot-free. But it's time for me to get back into my routine. Especially since I'm not getting fired and nothing terrible has happened. What, you want to look for a criminal trail in trivial deaths again? Smiled the Colonel. I have a better idea, as they say. I have a vacancy in the department. Of course, we won't take it right away. You have to retrain, take exams. It's nothing personal, Captain, but after 8 years in the line, some people even forget the American alphabet. The interrogator glowed. This was the chance that comes once in 10 years. so he was right, and the case was indeed a winnable one. Austin adjusted his spectacles, straightened up. "But don't think that we have a resort here," the colonel continued. "People here don't see their wives for weeks at a time. There's plenty of work. Salary? Well, better than yours, of course. But not a gold mine. You'd better think about it before you take it. If I submit my documents tomorrow, will it be okay?" said the former interrogator. "Maybe you could give me the phone number of the head of the personnel department right away, so that I don't have to bother you unnecessarily." The colonel smiled and shook Austin's hand. "Well, as they say here, welcome to the force, son. By the way, what do you think of the call sign Cupid? You look a little like him, don't you think?"